So much, and wishing you another 30 years, that's for sure. All right, Housing Next presentation. We're going to ask Ryan Kilpatrick to come up to the microphone and tell us where we're at with our Housing Next status. Where are we with our housing affordability issues?
Thank you, Mayor. Do I need to stay put here at the microphone?
You need to stay talking into the mic, yeah,
Right.
sorry.
Otherwise, Eric will be sad,
I tend to wander.
and his audience will be bored.
Got it. Oh, understood. All right. So I haven't had a chance yet to give you the full presentation from Housing Next. I know I've talked with all of you a lot about a lot of different things, but as I talked with Jennifer Howland and with Pat McGinnis, we began to realize that you haven't actually gotten the full package. So tonight, that's what we're going to do. We're going to walk through kind of the impetus for Housing Next, the work that we're doing, the space that we're playing in, the data that we've collected through the Housing Needs Assessment, the product that needs to get built and how we build it. This presentation is designed to be interactive, so feel free to interrupt at any point. Question me, question the data, the stats. This is all open book, open note. So real briefly, I'll cover where we came from, I think probably mostly for the radio audience, because I know you all know. But Housing Next was created about a year and a half ago now by the two community foundations in Ottawa County, the Community Foundation here in Grand Haven, as well as the Community Foundation in Holland, Zeeland. And it was after a whole lot of work that the United Way had done through what they call a collective impact model, which means they brought together a lot of different constituents who had an interest in housing, whether it be employers or housing advocates or property managers or developers, to talk through what are all the needs in the community. And they decided they really needed somebody to be thinking and working on this full time, and so they created Housing Next. But they didn't just create an organization, they also created a leadership council and a governing board, which is the folks that I report to on a regular basis. And this is the list. It's the Community Foundation presidents, it's our economic development arm at Lakeshore Advantage, it's the Chambers of Commerce on both ends of the county, the Lakeshore Nonprofit Alliance, the Ottawa County Administrator's Office, as well as the United Way President, Patrick Moran. So those are the folks that I'm reporting back to on a regular basis. But you all are frankly our customer. It's our municipalities and our development community. And so what we're trying to do is partner with our municipalities and partner with developers and figure out where is there a gap, where is there some disparity between the demand and the desire, and how do we begin to bridge that gap? How do we create more housing supply at all price points? So I'm not sure we recognized it at the time that Housing Next was created, but it's really a great example of something that we have begun to call the new localism. And this is an idea that, frankly, I think West Michigan and Ottawa County generally have espoused for a really long time. And this is the notion that we can't wait around for state or federal government to solve local problems. We need to be able to leverage the tools at the state and the federal level wherever we can, but we can't allow them to either dictate or drive the decisions at a local level. And so the new localism is a partnership between municipalities, for-profits, nonprofits, NGOs, to create new mechanisms and structures for solving problems while we leverage both state and federal resources as well as our local resources. And so Housing Next was created, as I mentioned, to solve for housing at all price points. And one of the first things that's important here, as we begin to get into debates about, well, what is affordable housing and who needs affordable housing and what kind of product is the right product, the first thing to do is to talk about the term affordability. And the importance of that is really due to the fact that for 40 or 50 years, we've had a lot of stigma that's been built up around the idea of affordable housing. Mentally, most of us, and myself included for a long time, we tend to compartmentalize what affordable housing is, what it looks like, who it's designed for, and where it belongs, without really thinking about what does the term mean. And so as we talk about housing affordability, we talk about affordability at all price points. And so essentially what that means is none of us want to overpay for housing. So regardless of how much income we're making, it tends to be a bad idea for any of us to spend more than 30% of our income on housing. And so when you think about housing from that frame of mind and within that context, what we're trying to do here is solve for housing supply. So we have built not enough supply, over, frankly, the last 25 years. And that lack of building was exacerbated by the Great Recession and the downturn in the housing market in 2007 and 2008. And then we had 5 years of almost no supply construction, while simultaneously we had a lot of houses that were owned by families that were foreclosed upon and bought by investors, which then became rentals. And when we have a lack of supply and more demand than that supply can handle, price tends to go up. And so that's what we've seen in the market, and I'll have another slide that addresses that. But I wanted to first just stress the point that we need more supply at all price points, and that means housing for families earning $18,000 a year, as well as housing for families earning $100,000 a year and more. All of it is important to the housing ecosystem. So getting back a little bit to the data, this is national data. We're going to start way up high, and we're going to zoom into local level data. So what this shows you is monthly rent levels year over year across the country in blue, and in orange, the vacancy level and the vacancy rate. And so what you're seeing is rents have gone up by roughly 1 to 2 percentage points a year every year for about the last 10 years. Now, this graph ends in 2015. The increase actually was steadily greater each year through 2018 as we have additional data. Meanwhile, what's happening is the vacancy rate is going down. That means the number of available units at any given moment in time is reduced. And so when there's not enough supply in the marketplace, that creates a lot more competition, right? So if we've got, it's kind of like a game of musical chairs. The fewer chairs you have in the ring and the more people you have, the faster you have to run around that circle in order to get your chair. Well, that's happening in the housing market right now, except instead of running fast, you have to have more money. And so what we're finding is there's competition for an inadequate amount of supply, and that's pushing price up. Josh?
Are you serious on questions? Are we good? Cool. Can you go back to the one slide? Is this a function of the vacancy rates going down? Is that a function of an increase in population size? Is this economic pressure, and so there all of a sudden are fewer houses that are being demolished, or kind of what's driven the demand a little bit?
Yeah, so mostly it's economic growth.
Okay.
Ottawa County is one of the fastest growing counties in the state of Michigan. We continue to grow by roughly 6% a year, year over year. So over the last 30 years, we've added about 15,000 new households. But we've only built about 10,000 additional houses. And so over that period of time, you get this increased competition for supply. And so in a healthy rental market, and frankly in a healthy real estate market, you're always going to have about a 5% vacancy rate, which is enough for people to kind of move around. And that's enough of a vacancy rate to incentivize property owners and developers to fix up existing units. So the secondary impact of having a low vacancy rate is landlords who own properties that are in poor condition have very little incentive to upgrade those properties, to keep them looking nice, because they know there's a steady stream of renters who will always rent. So having that healthy vacancy rate around 5% is important to be able to both generate investment in the community as well as create enough gap in the supply so that people can find units that they need. So these are the three things that Housing Next is charged with doing. Increasing housing supply at all price points, providing support for housing choice across the workforce. What that means is, and I'll talk more deeply about this in a couple of minutes, but we've built a lot of single-family detached housing product over the last 40 years. We're really good at doing that, and it's an important slice of the market. But it's not the only slice of the market, and frankly, it's the most expensive component. So talking about other housing types and other housing options in the marketplace is an important part of this conversation. And then lastly, strengthening partnerships among nonprofits, among the development community, among suppliers and builders, as well as across municipal boundaries. So thinking through, how do we think about transportation as an element to housing cost and location-based costs? And how do we think about planning and zoning across municipal boundaries so that not any one municipality is responsible for solving what is essentially a regional issue. So these are all the levers that we have in the ecosystem that we can try to pull or push. So I'll read these out loud, even though I know you can read them. Land use planning and zoning support is one of the most critical. That's what we've been working on for about the last year, and as you all are aware, there's an update to the zoning ordinance coming here in Grand Haven. That's also happening in Grand Haven Township. The village of Spring Lake is working on updates. We've got updates happening on the east side of the county and the south side of the county, so everybody's kind of rethinking their zoning. Improving mobility options. I'm going to talk about this at length towards the end of the presentation, but this is a critical component of housing affordability over time. Supporting wage growth and educational opportunities. At the end of the day, this gets down to a gap between the cost of living and the amount that we get paid on an annual basis. And we can't necessarily point fingers at employers, but we also can't say, well, it's just the local municipality's job to provide for more affordable housing. Both of these things are in tension with one another, and we've got to find solutions that pair the two together. Leverage and prioritize the use of local, state, and federal incentive tools. So in Michigan, local municipalities can only do the things that the state has empowered the local municipality to do. And so first, we have to leverage all the tools that the state has given us, as well as the tools that the state holds on to and chooses when and where to use. Second, we'll begin to advocate for new legislation as we find it appropriate. And we'll do that in concert with our local municipalities. Next is philanthropic and corporate funds to support development. This is a critical element. So where we can't push any further on wage growth, we want to have conversations about how do we better support development that both the community wants and that residents need. And then lastly is innovation in the construction process. And I'll talk a little bit about this later, but the gist here is we still pretty much build houses the same way we did 100 years ago. There haven't been any major breakthroughs in technology. For the most part, we're not building panelized or modular housing, and yet there is opportunity to do that and save 15 to 20% on the cost of construction. So we're working with partners across the region, reaching out to suppliers in the Grand Rapids market and in the Holland Zeeland market to figure out how do we find efficiencies in the supply chain, how do we think through panelization and modularization so that we can build in climate-controlled environments, we can build year-round, we can find more stabilization in the construction market for labor. One of the biggest increases in costs has been the lack of labor. So again, it's a supply-demand issue. We haven't had enough supply in the market, and that's really impacting the cost over time. So we're going to talk about housing supply at all price points, and we're going to talk about who needs it. And so I like to talk about a young woman. This is Penny. Penny has an associate's degree. She's working on her bachelor's degree, and she's a first-year engineer with a local manufacturing company. And she has just felt like she's in a position where she can move out of her parents' house. So the problem is, even though she wants to move out of mom and dad's house, she can't afford an apartment in the community on her own. She doesn't make enough. She makes $32,000 a year. That's not enough to rent a decent apartment in town. So she has the option of either staying with her parents for another 2 years while she finishes her bachelor's degree, or she has the option of taking on several roommates. Well, the problem is many of her roommates make different life choices than she does. She likes to study at night instead of party. She gets up early in the morning. She doesn't want to clean up after her friends to do the dishes or their laundry, all of those things. So the problem is what Penny needs is, frankly, a studio apartment. 450 square feet is enough room for a small living area, a bedroom, a kitchen, a bathroom. Penny's not going to cook Thanksgiving dinner at her house. She's not ever going to have 20 people over for a dinner party. Frankly, what she needs is a place that is warm, safe, and dry, where she can study, where she can eat breakfast and lunch, and where she can get a good night's rest. The problem is a 400 square foot apartment is, for the most part, not legal in Ottawa County. We have a couple of municipalities that will permit a unit this small, but most of them do not. So this is what I like to call the IKEA catalog version of that 400 square foot apartment. Sparsely furnished, right? She's not spending a ton of money on furniture. It's not an exorbitant amount of space. This is not an apartment for a family of 4, right? We just get that out of the way. We're not going to try to house every single family in a small, tiny apartment. But 40% of our rental market today is single adults with no kids. 40% of the market is single adults with no kids. And yet, this is literally a zoning ordinance from a community in Ottawa County that says the smallest apartment you can build is 884 square feet. And so what we're doing across the county, and this isn't a finger point at the city of Grand Haven because you have a better ordinance, but just to kind of bring awareness to the issue, across the county we have municipalities that are making it impossible for Penny to find an affordable place to live at a market rate. Because all she needs is 400 square feet and the local municipality requires twice the amount of square footage, she's automatically priced out of a new apartment in that community. At the same time, and I know that this is a sensitive issue in Grand Haven at certain times of year, a lot of our municipalities require 2 parking spaces per dwelling unit. But once again, when we think about 40% of our renters are single adults with no kids, when we impose a 2-space parking requirement on an apartment that's only occupied by 1 driving adult, we suddenly have all of this excess parking that probably 80 to 90 to 95% of the year is going to be vacant. In most of our communities across the United States, we have 8 parking spaces for every human. And that's because we assume people are going to move around all the time and they're always going to want a convenient place to park close to the place that they're going. But the problem is we're consuming a lot of expensive land with asphalt to store vehicles instead of homes for people to live in. So essentially, our zoning ordinances have been a system perfectly designed to create this product. This is a great product for families with kids, for people that want a lot of space. In 1979, the average new single-family house was under 900 square feet in size. In 2010, the average new single-family house was 2,600 square feet in size. So we had a 3-fold increase in the size of houses that were constructed. Simultaneously, the average size of a household, the number of people in each household, has dropped by half. So we went from roughly 4.8 people per household in the mid-60s, early 70s, down to about 2.2 people per household. So we have this disparity, and it's not local municipalities' fault. It's a lot the market. We had very cheap construction costs in the 90s and early 2000s. We did a lot of building. Everybody wanted an open floor concept with 3 beds and 2 baths. But we're now recognizing that a shift in generational demand has caught up with us, and we don't need as much of that product as we thought we once did. So briefly, I want to talk about ALICE. This is an acronym that the United Way uses. It refers to Asset Limited, Income Constrained, and Employed. And basically that means you're working full-time and you still aren't making enough to pay the bills. So we've got a lot of these folks living in our communities. We have a lot of these folks who are integral components of our communities, without whom our daily functions would grind to a halt. Factory workers, firefighters, teachers, preschool teachers, a lot of our home health care workers are all making less than $18 or $19 an hour. And for the most part, this segment of the population can't afford to live in town. And so they're driving and they're commuting, very many of them are commuting from Muskegon or Grand Rapids or Holland, or even further south in Allegan. And so that's typically adding 30 or 40 minutes to their commute. Today, if you're driving to Grand Rapids, it's about 50 minutes because of all the construction. And that time lost is lack of productivity, it's lack of time spent with family, it's cost of gas, it's cost of vehicle wear and tear. So meeting demand where it is the second component of Housing Next's charge. And so a lot of what we talk about is just making space for more choice in the marketplace. As I mentioned before, we do a great job of building single-family detached housing. We've done a really good job of that for 60 or 70 years. We have all kinds of federal policies that dictate how we finance that. We have all kinds of local zoning that makes that really easy. But what we're beginning to understand is that the infrastructure cost necessary to support that single-family housing product is more expensive than the value of many of the homes using that infrastructure. So the short way of saying that is the more we spread houses out on large lots, unless those houses are valued at $450,000, $500,000 each, they tend not to pay enough taxes to fund the infrastructure in the ground that services them. So generally what we have to do now as we think about infrastructure that's 50 and 60 years old is think through what are the number of units at certain value points necessary to pay for that infrastructure. In some cases it's 8 or 9 units per acre, like essentially what you have in the downtown, in the core of downtown and adjacent to downtown. In other circumstances it's closer to 15 units per acre. And that's still roughly a 3,000 to 5,000 square foot single family lot. You can still build that at those levels of density. But it can also be attached townhouses and duplexes. It can be brownstones. It can be stacked flats. So you may have a ground floor apartment with another apartment on top of it, all of which can be owner occupied or rented. There are a lot of ways to slice this, and I'll talk about what the market's asking for right now. But there are very few situations in which we continue to expand our urban footprint outward because the infrastructure costs are too expensive. This is part of the reason we haven't built enough supply over the last 7 or 8 years, is that local municipalities have recognized that it's not worth it for them to pay for the extension of sewer and water and roads to new housing developments, because those developments don't pay their costs in taxes. And so as local municipalities and the townships have said, we're not going to pay for this for you, developer, you need to pay for it yourself, a lot of developers have said, I can't make the math work anymore. We've got to find ways to leverage infrastructure that already exists and pay for it tenfold in going forward. So here's the important thing about that, is it happens to coincide with a major shift in demographic preferences. What we're finding in the market right now is roughly a third of baby boomers in the market are looking for a more walkable, place-oriented pattern of living. They want to be able to walk to dinner or to a bakery or to the post office or to the library. These things are important. Now that's only a third, so 2/3 of that generation are still looking at larger lots, single-family detached. However, millennials, roughly half of that generation, a little more than half, are looking for that walkable, place-oriented urban environment. And frankly, Grand Haven has that in spades. You've got lots of great little neighborhoods, neighborhood business districts. You've got a fantastic downtown, all of the kinds of things that are going to attract more and more people to the community. But again, as we have limitations on supply, those limitations on supply are going to push up price because the demand is going to continue to come. And so the benefits of that are that you will have an increased taxable value, you'll have more investment in the public schools, you'll have more tax dollars to pay for the replacement of infrastructure. But if we don't leverage that new generation of investment into housing now to create more housing units on existing infrastructure, we're going to lose some of that momentum and you'll be locked in essentially to the housing stock that you have today for another generation or longer. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I would contend that there may be some neighborhoods or some pockets in some neighborhoods where there's opportunity to build more supply. So this is a quick graph from my Economics 101 class back in 2003, where we talked about how supply and demand impact price. So talk a little bit about how we invest in housing and at what price points we need to invest. Because I think what we're going to start to see is a lot more demand for luxury housing downtown. You're already seeing it. We've got a beautiful brownstone project downtown. We've got another luxury apartment project proposed downtown. These are good investments. They're good for the community. It's a necessary product in the marketplace. So here's an example, luxury housing. It's beautiful. We all would likely want something like this if we could afford it. And some contenders in the marketplace would say, when you make investments in luxury housing, there's this impact on other housing across the marketplace, right? So you build a luxury house. What happens is a high-cost homeowner says, I'm going to move out of this house in the suburbs so I can live downtown, and that frees up that house in the suburbs for maybe a middle-class household who's ready to move up. That is absolutely true. There is that churn in the marketplace that gets created when you have new luxury housing. And all supply is good supply. The problem with that calculation is that this is the wage distribution in Ottawa County. And as you can see, a significant percentage of our workforce is earning below $60,000 a year. So well over 65% of our workforce is in that $65,000 a year or below category, and the luxury product isn't what they need, and the trickle-down effects don't happen fast enough for that level of workforce. So just investing in luxury housing doesn't cut it when it comes to our workforce because it doesn't catch up to them quickly enough. So then we have other folks in the ecosystem who will say, well, we should just invest in affordable housing. Make all of our investments there because that'll impact the downside, the super low-cost housing, as well as the middle class and a little bit into the upper middle class. Also true, all supply is good supply. It all impacts the market. It's all important. But what's interesting about this graphic, and this is roughly illustrative of where we need more supply, the size of those bars is pretty well in line with the kinds of housing types that you need and the price points that you need. The significant majority of demand is in that middle-class housing category. And we don't have a lot of people out there advocating, well, we should build a lot more middle-class housing. It's either we'll just let the market drive it, or it's just build affordability. And our contention is we need investment at all price points. But what we really need to do is figure out how do we unlock the market so that the market can be building that middle-class price point that used to be ubiquitous. And so we'll talk about what that means. What is the middle-class price point? So we had a housing needs assessment conducted towards the end of 2018. So this is all 2018 data. And what this does is tells you countywide, where do we need a significant amount of housing supply? And so it's telling us countywide we need a lot of low-income rental housing and a lot of workforce housing. So more than 2,500 units in those price points among rental housing stock, countywide, again. But we also need 800 additional market rate rental units. But then when we look at the for sale product, and this is the product that we don't necessarily talk about enough in some of these conversations, the most demand we have for sale product is in that moderate income for sale. And that's $150,000 to $250,000 home ownership price point. So this used to be the bread and butter of the building industry. We used to build $150,000 to $200,000 houses all day long everywhere. And that really has been cut out of the marketplace by a combination of factors, which includes a shortage of labor supply, an increase in land costs, an increase in infrastructure costs, and the inability of local zoning to be flexible. So we can influence some of those things, and we're trying to influence everything that we can. But the opportunity to build more of that supply falls upon us in a couple of different ways. So here again, this shows you the disparity between supply and demand. And what you see is there's enough supply at both the $100,000 to $150,000 price point relative to incomes. So and basically what this is indicative of is a lot of the folks who can afford to be in that $100,000 to $150,000 price point are priced out of the market not by lack of supply, but by lack of resources. So likely what happens is they don't have the credit score to get a mortgage, they don't have the ability to fix up the house to bring it up to code, or they don't have the down payment necessary to buy into a house at that price point. On the $250,000 plus price point, again, we have more supply than we do demand in that category. It's in that middle market, that $150,000 to $250,000 price point. We have 34% of the market is looking for that type of product, and only 15% of the current supply is offering that product. So this is way more data than I really want you to read, but what this is telling you is we have specific data for Northwest Ottawa County, essentially for the Tri-Cities area, and we can tell you the price point and the type of product that we really need in the Tri-Cities, and I'll make sure that this slide is available to you. I think there's just too much data to talk through in a setting like this. So now I want to start to get into what are the examples of housing products that we could be building, but largely we're not. So these are all examples of single-family, owner-occupied housing product that I think are aligned with the character of a lot of the communities in Northwest Ottawa County, but that currently are prohibited because technically local zoning doesn't make these either easy or possible. So these are also all products that we could build for under $250,000 per unit. Now that's dependent on the level of finish, right? If we did all marble countertops and custom cabinetry, the price goes up pretty fast. But if you do a basic level of finish, these types of housing products can be built for under $250,000. So again, the attached townhouse, what we've got to recognize here is where we're battling against price, and there's a scarcity of supply. Although maybe all of us would like to live on an acre or 5 acres, we can't say because we all aspire to that, that's the only product we should build. We've got to find ways of building high quality product that maybe aren't your dream home for the next 30 years of your life, but is a great place for you to invest for the next 10 years of your life. And so building attached townhouses and duplexes, condominium units that allow for a more efficient use of space and a more efficient use of land is a great opportunity. So that townhouse I just showed you, this is the floor plan stacked on top of each other. Main floor, living and kitchen, upper floor, 2 bedrooms. We can build this product today for $150,000. And that's an affordable product for a household earning about $35,000 a year. The problem is we don't have a lot of opportunity in any of our jurisdictions in the county to actually build it because zoning makes it really difficult. The other thing is smaller homes. These used to be ubiquitous. Prior to the 1960s, a lot of these got built in that post-World War II era. We built a lot of those little shoebox houses, which today, not necessarily everybody loves, but they were an important component of the housing product that was frankly incentivized by the GI Bill. Today, most local zoning ordinances say you can't build anything smaller than 1,000 square feet if it's a single-family detached house. Well, this one's 720 square feet. And I would contend that it has just as much architectural character as a lot of the Grand Victorians do. It's got a simpler footprint, it's got a simpler design template, but we can still build beautiful houses even though they're small. The other thing to do is think about efficient use of space, and this isn't on local municipalities, this is on designers and builders. Although, again, we all want the open floor concept, the big sprawling kitchen that leads into the den, that leads into the dining room. This dining room is 48 square feet. So it's an expensive window system, right? So that has added cost, but you don't necessarily need that. We don't need to have a separate room for every function in our lives. This is a 64 square foot kitchen. High-end appliances, good level of cabinetry. These are nice houses. We're not advocating that the community should allow a lot of cheap housing to make it affordable. We're advocating that we think about how we use space as efficiently as possible. The other big opportunity is housing above retail, and I know that we've got a good stock of housing above retail in downtown, and there's competition for that. But there are other retail environments across the community where it begins to make sense to think about, will this space be most productively used as retail in the future? Or has the advent of home delivery service for almost anything you can imagine started to allow us to question whether or not we need to dedicate all of that real estate singularly for retail operation? And so the opportunity here is we can slowly begin to infill retail sites to build more housing on those sites, but it's got to be done with a good eye toward design so that the community feels satisfied with it. And so that it adds value over a long period of time. So this is my favorite graphic. It's going to change. This is an example of what happens when we re-envision a retail corridor over a generational life cycle, right? So this kind of investment doesn't happen in a 5-year time period. We're not likely to find a single developer that's going to walk in and say, I'll do all of that investment and we'll do it at the snap of a finger. But if we plan for it and we allow for some of our strip retail corridors to transition over time, and we clearly articulate what are the standards for architectural design, what are the elements that are really important to us from a community perspective, ultimately the character that you have in downtown Grand Haven wasn't created by waving a magic wand, it was created by intentionality. And we can apply that same intentionality across the entirety of the city, but we have to recognize that it happens incrementally and it happens over a long period of time. So we're getting close to the end of my presentation, but one of the most important things for us to think about as we think about the total cost of living is to talk about mobility. So for the most part, all of us, myself included, are really tied to having a vehicle, a car, to get almost anywhere we go. And there's a lot of important things that come with that. And today, I don't think any of us would really want to operate or try to function without a car. But what that does for all of us is add $600 on average a month to our expenses. So after you factor in either whatever you paid to buy the car outright with cash over time, or your monthly car payment, plus your insurance, plus your gas, plus your annual repair budget, all of those things add up to $600 or $700 a month for each car that you own. And so what we haven't done well over the last 40 or 50 years is to allow families to make choices about whether or not they want to be a 2-car household or a 1-car household or a no-car household. Because the infrastructure that we've designed and that we've built and that we've prioritized for funding makes it next to impossible for us to make any decision other than to drive a car. And for a lot of us that's okay because we can afford it and it's just been our pattern of life for a long period of time. But as we start to think about, at Housing Next, as we start to think about how do we make the biggest impact for the most families who really need that gap covered in their housing costs, For us to provide a $500 or $600 or $700 a month subsidy in rent or in mortgage payments to the number of households we have across the county would be in the hundreds of millions of dollars every year. And we don't have that kind of capital available to us. But if we were able to make the option available, not a mandate, but the option available for each of those households to say, I think we can cut back to just one car. If dad can get to work by walking or jumping on the interurban or taking a bicycle and he's not taking his life in his hands and it doesn't take him 2 hours to get to work, that becomes a viable option. And they begin to have a rational choice for thinking about how can we save money without having to go and ask for a government subsidy for our housing costs. So it's important to think about the fact that we designed this system. All of us contributed to it over generations, right? Since the 1950s and the Highway Urban Revitalization Act, we've made lots of little decisions that have added up to where we are. And it's going to take lots of little decisions going forward into the future that create incremental change over a long period of time to get us on a different path. So as an example, and this is an extreme example, right? I don't expect us to become the Netherlands overnight, but this is Rotterdam. This is downtown Rotterdam, and the two images that are side by side are the same street from the same angle, taken 40 years apart. So on the right, well, it's not quite the same angle. Josh, I saw your look right there. You might be elevated a couple, 30 feet. So on the right, what you have is early 1970s car culture dominating the Netherlands. In the mid-70s, there were a bunch of young student activists who staged protests. They called them die-ins. They laid in the street with bicycles on top of them. And they said, we need spaces to ride our bikes again. There had been a strong bicycle culture in the Netherlands prior to the 1960s, and that started to go away as everybody owned cars. And there were, frankly, a number of people who were being killed in car accidents locally. And there were some local politicians who said, okay, in Rotterdam, we're going to start to prioritize 5% of our budget every year for bicycle facilities, separated facilities. And after 5 or 6 years, they said, this is working well. We're going to increase that to 12%. And after a couple of years, they said, this is working really well. We're going to increase that to 40%. And so that's where they are today, is in 2011, they became the most bicycle-friendly city in the world. And more than 80% of the trips in the city of Rotterdam are taken by bicycle. And it's not to say that Grand Haven should become a super bike-friendly city. It is simply to say they made a series of decisions and prioritizations around how they wanted to invest in infrastructure over time. And as a result of those compounding decisions over a long period of time, the entire face of the community changed. So I want to talk a little bit about, just in case I've convinced you that bike riding is a good idea, we've got to be thinking about our most vulnerable populations as we think about mobility. So most of us are able-bodied, we can drive our own cars, we can walk ourselves, we can get around just fine. But I've got 2 little kids, and I've got a 97-year-old grandfather who are all mobile, none of whom can drive a car, and so they're entirely dependent on me to get around. However, if we had infrastructure that allowed us to feel safe in our environment, not as though we were taking our life in our hands every time we got on the bike and rode on anything other than a separated pathway, ridership goes up. So that's the end of that soapbox. I don't necessarily expect you to make major decisions on that front, but I do want you to take away from this the fact that housing is one component of our monthly cost of living. Transportation tends to be the second most expensive line item in most household budgets. And if we can begin to solve for transportation as we simultaneously work on housing, we can make a pretty significant impact on the cost of living and, frankly, on quality of life and the amount that you have to invest in repairing roads over time. So lastly, this gets into, well, what can the city actually do? Well, I would like to offer you a template that we can partner with you on. Essentially, and I gave this presentation to the Michigan Municipal League with Keith Van Beek in the city of Holland, I think about 3 months ago. And we've essentially boiled this down to a local municipality having roughly 4 tools in your toolbox to impact housing choice and price point. And it's planning, zoning, investment, and abatements. And so quickly, I think you all know how the master plan process works. You all know how the zoning ordinance works. From an investment standpoint, you've made some significant investments in downtown Grand Haven, and I think those investments are beginning to reap the benefits. You're seeing a lot of new investment coming alongside those public investments that have been there. That infrastructure investment attracts private capital. And so again, thinking about some of those great little business districts across the city and across this region allows us to think about how do we create more demand in other neighborhoods in addition to all the demand that you're experiencing downtown right now. And those can be incremental investments, they can be small, they can be lighter, quicker, cheaper, so that you're not investing tens of thousands of dollars at a time. They can be little mini parklets at a time. But they begin to show the private sector that somebody's paying attention, and the private sector typically responds by making corresponding investments. And then lastly, it's your abatement schedule. So the state has enabled you with the ability to abate taxes on a number of different cases. There's the Commercial Rehab Act, there's the Payment in Lieu of Tax program, there's Brownfield TIF, there's lots of different programs that you can use. And so what I would encourage you to do over time is to think about how do you want to prioritize the use of those tools to get what you want for the community. So I'm obviously here advocating for more housing choice and affordability, but there are other community priorities that you can also leverage those tools against. So thinking about how do you want to pay for new infrastructure? You can use private development to pay for new infrastructure while also thinking about housing affordability and housing at all price points. Thinking about recreational trails, thinking about park spaces. All of those things can be paid for with some of these programs, but it takes a concerted effort and it takes a policy program so that it's not just giving away tax reductions to anybody that asks, but it's saying these are our priorities, this is how we're willing to use these tools and in what situations, and then it's setting a framework and reevaluating that framework on at least an annual basis as time goes on, so that you can have specific metrics over time, you can measure your progress against those metrics, and you can refine your process going forward. So lastly, what we're trying to do here is align land use and transportation options across the region. So I mentioned earlier, we don't want each municipality to operate in silos. What we want to do is start to think about what are the connections between Grand Haven and Spring Lake, and Grand Haven Township, and eventually, how do we make connections between Grand Haven and Muskegon, and Grand Haven and Holland? How are our policy choices impacting one another? How are our investments in infrastructure impacting one another? And how are investments in housing and job growth impacting one another? We're beginning to find that as job growth increases in Holland, it has a direct impact on how many cars are running up and down the highway through the city of Grand Haven, right? And so having an awareness of how many jobs is Gentex going to add this year means we might have another 20 or 30 cars coming down from Muskegon every day, down 31. And being aware of those things is important. Establishing consistent and thorough design standards, in my opinion, is critical. And what this means is we stigmatized affordable housing for a pretty darn good reason. And it was because it was poorly designed in the 1960s. We got a lot of bad housing projects where we concentrated poverty in isolated pockets, and the results were not good. And as a result, most of the community says, well, I definitely don't want that in my backyard. Even for those of us that say, yes, I feel for the folks who need more affordable housing, we say, gosh, I've seen affordable housing in other communities or in our community and it wasn't well done, and I'm very fearful of having that close to my kids or close to my household. And so what we've got to do is destigmatize that through good design. And that doesn't just mean aesthetic design, it means mixed income neighborhoods. It means we're designing neighborhoods where you've got aspirational and attainable housing at a variety of price points within walking distance of one another. So you don't necessarily put a $40,000 tiny home next to a $500,000 McMansion. But there are opportunities to integrate different types of housing into neighborhoods that feel cohesive and as though there is still a sense of community. And then lastly, amenities make density enjoyable. This is an important thing that we've learned about cities over the last 20 years. As younger generations begin to migrate towards cities more and more, what we're finding is they're attracted to those amenities. Things like the investments that you're making in the waterfront right now, the amphitheater, the downtown infrastructure, the catwalk, those are all things that are attracting investment. And it may not all come in 1 year, but recognizing that those amenities are critically important to attracting both talent and the labor force is an important step going forward to think about how do we want to prioritize our investments for the future. And so lastly, what I would say is What we really want to do is enable and empower communities to build for the long-term future. And so again, we're not advocating that we build a lot of cheap housing as quickly as possible just so that we can temporarily warehouse people. What we want to do is build community, and we want community that the entire neighborhood is proud of, and buildings that will last and are adaptable so that even though we have a housing crunch today, tomorrow they may be able to transition to something else. And frankly, that's been the beauty of downtown Grand Haven is those buildings have transitioned in use probably 20 or 30 times over the life cycle of those buildings. And it's because they were well-built buildings that were flexible and adaptable. So thinking about how do we do that in other places and continue that pattern, I think is important. So thank you for the opportunity to provide a very long monologue. Happy to entertain questions, dialogue, confrontation, all of those things.
All right, thanks, Ryan. I want to make a couple comments about your comparison of us with the Netherlands, because there's a few differences. One is, you have to like that kind of people living in close proximity to each other. The row houses, the narrow streets, the winding alleys, they're really not built for cars, and so cars just really kind of get in your way. The other thing is the Netherlands is extremely flat, and so there's dunes and dikes, but it's not as it's easier to pedal a long ways there than it is here, where you're dealing with a lot of various topography, and also the weather. They don't have the heavy duty winters that we do, so that then you take the streetcar or the tram or the bus. The other thing that's really, really nice that we don't have is their stores are in their neighborhoods, which I think it would be beneficial to us to reestablish that sort of thing, to make that affordable. But they tell me that the stores, you have to have the volume in order to exist, and that volume is not in the center of town. That volume is on the outskirts. And so that is something that would, because if you want to ride your bike to the store, you don't want to ride it miles. You want to, when we were there a couple of years ago, it was a 10-minute walk to a very nice grocery store. And so, and everybody did it. So that was kind of part of the deal. So there are major changes if you want to live that kind of a, if you want to incorporate that kind of a lifestyle. There's a ways to go before we can incorporate that, into which is one of the reasons that my father really liked coming here, because he could spread out, and his yard was more than a postage stamp outside of his back door, and there wasn't different families living on each level, which is something you have to enjoy in order to live that kind of lifestyle. But I think in order to bring more that density of population, I mean, I can see where that works in order to get your prices down, because you're sharing a lot of infrastructure and stuff rather than your individual single-family home. But in order to achieve that, I think there have to be major changes in even our lifestyles, as opposed to and our desires, in order to make these kind of zoning changes than what we've been used to and what we have now. So. But so some observations on your presentation. But thanks, there's a lot of very good stuff there, and very interesting observations and statistics that I'm sure we'll work hard to absorb, but appreciate it. I'll open it up to other folks.
Thanks, Ryan. There's a lot of information, very good information, a lot of research, and this has been a priority for all of us for a long time, and a long time into the future. On kind of a superficial level, maybe it's not so superficial. The future looks something like the past. The past, the pre-World War past, when people were more on foot, people were more closer to their work, people lived in somewhat tighter neighborhoods and didn't spread out over huge lots, huge homes. Some of the plats in this town have 50-foot wide lots. My lot where I live is 47 feet wide. You wouldn't normally see that anymore, but at the time it was platted, that's the way it was. Normally you see much larger lots. So I think to some degree we're kind of recalibrating what we think of as a city or an urban environment, more like what perhaps my grandfather grew up with. I like the emphasis on standards and design, because what happened before just happened. People did the best they could. They figured out how to live and how to get through each day. Then we moved away from that. We moved away from a couple of generations of living basically by the car. And if we're going to kind of back off from that and recalibrate our lifestyles, we can do that in a very deliberate manner, a very thoughtful manner, and we have a lot to go back and look at. But I think that, like I say, I think to some degree we're looking at how did cities evolve in the first place? How did people live in previous generations? And how does that work for us now? And what do we need to do to make that happen? And everything I've heard that you said, I think can be done, but it's going to take some effort and it's going to take some rethinking of who we are and where we came from, where we're going. So I really appreciate this. But it's going to take me a while to digest all this. So thank you very much.
One thing Bob said that strikes a chord with me is the concept of history is destined to repeat itself. In the description of the ideal neighborhood, with the amenities close by that you've described, where a family or young couple, individuals can walk anywhere they need to go, by and large, and maybe rely on one vehicle. Let's say it wasn't even that long ago. I grew up the 1000 block of Penoyer, just on the other side of the highway, across the street from Ferry School. Foodland Grocery was down in Washington Square, and I could walk down there. My mom would send me down there to buy a loaf of bread and some peanut butter and jelly. When we were short, we as kids would duck across the street and go to Pabst to pick up some candy or pick up mom's prescription or whatever it is. And then there was a video rental store down there, Videorama, which had its own challenges, and we could go play in the arcade. And it was all walkable. And we had one car. We were a one-income family, school teacher, and the big station wagon that we took out every once in a while. And for us, if we needed more groceries, Meijer was right down over here by Jackson. So I could hop on my bike and ride down there, or whatever it may be. So I think the vision, it wasn't that long ago that it was here in Grand Haven, and we have moved out. We've got subdivisions. We've got cars that we drive to Meijer and Walmart and so forth. And I guess where I'm going with this, I would love, I don't know if you have case studies on neighborhoods that you could find. I'm sure there are. But the Washington Square neighborhood is one of those that I think is just prime for some reinvestment and some development in a way that, I don't want to turn back the clock. I think but in a way, some parts of it I want to turn back with the walkability and the neighborhood feel. And there is need for a lot of development over there. So I don't know, if you can find some case studies and look up Washington Square, connect with Pat or one of us on what that was, what it looked like, and what it could look like, it'd be great to figure out a way to get some money in and vision and cast a vision where people could actually do this. And the 500 square foot apartments, year-round living in Grand Haven and support our downtown businesses and everywhere in between. I think it'd be awesome. So I'm excited about what you got. And as Bob said and Jerry said, there's a lot of info here. So I have to digest it.
Very good. Thanks, Ryan. Again, a very good report and everything on that. You're absolutely correct. Everything is going around in a circle. Just Josh was saying, I grew up in the north end of town here. The family had, there was 5 kids, a grandmother, a dog, a cat, and a house probably maybe 700 and some square feet. 208 North 6th Street. Ride by, take a look at it. It was very functional. It really did work. There was it was great. And as Josh said, there was a grocery store right over here on the corner where the Knights of Columbus is. There's Tripp and Weaver's there. You had another grocery store just down the street, which was J&D Food Market. You had Johnson's Grocery. I could go there all the time. We had a lot of families, a lot of young people. The housing was much more affordable. The houses were not big houses, but there was still housing that you could put families in. And it was great. What you're saying is kind of like coming back around. What I'm getting back to the old processes. What we have here is we're going right around the circle again. We need to go back to that stable part. My parents bought their house in the 50s. That's basically where we're coming back to. We need to make those decisions. I've seen people build those houses, 3,000, 4,000 square feet with only 4 people. It's a waste of place and everything on that order. And we're also taking up our farmland. If you go out in the townships and they're buying them up and developing and building these big homes and stuff in there, and they're taking up stuff that we basically need for our needs here. Ottawa County is a good place for our vegetables and fruits, and it's done up on that order for us here. And every time you take more of that farmland away, it makes it least, should I say, not the place that you really want to live, because you don't have that supply here. The millennials and that, they like to walk. They like to congregate in groups. They like to be in smaller areas. I see that with my sons and my daughters, the same thing. Transportation is just another thing for them to go a long ways. They can hop on a bus, they can fly, they do everything else on that order. They don't necessarily need cars anymore. Bikes is a big thing for them. So you're heading in the right direction. I gotta say thank you so very much. I've seen this go around in my lifetime, and I'm sure my kids will see the same thing. So anything we can do. I was just reading an article in our magazine from the Michigan Municipal League. I think it's called Northwest Housing, is it? Up there, and they're doing basically the same thing. And it'd be nice to partner with them to maybe for legislators and that to help us, give us some more tools that we can use in our communities too. So it was a very interesting article. I just happened to get it today, and I was reading it, so it kind of touches on the same categories that you've been talking about. Thank you.
I too grew up with like Mike did, with the small grocery stores all over the place. You could walk to. Yeah, they're all over this town. Yeah, I mean they were. I could name a lot of them, but the big stores put them out, of course. I mean, because affordability is and they made things so much cheaper that they couldn't compete. And I just don't see that happening again. You know, and I don't. You know, the big stores are just a reality now, and it's pretty going to be hard for to bring small stores back like that again. It's just almost impossible. But and Grand Haven here is pretty dense. I mean, we're pretty well maxed out right now as far as housing goes. I mean, we have a few areas that we could do it to, but you know, people are buying the old houses up just as fast as they come up for sale right now, and you know, the old areas that the houses were getting bad and look they were looking bad, all of a sudden you see people buying those things up, improving them, making them so. There's really not a lot of places in Grand Haven we can do that. There's a few places maybe that's land that's available, but not a lot. And so and as far as bike travel goes, again, our weather just doesn't permit that 3 or 4 months out of the year. And we have Harbor Transit, which is a great resource. I think, you know, for affordability, for transportation, I think we have a great system here for low-income people to take advantage of. So I think it's a problem with Grand Haven. I don't see a real easy cure for it, but maybe there's something we can find. But to me, it's stretching it quite a bit, because Grand Haven, like I said, even the old neighborhoods, people are buying those houses up fast as they come up for sale, and they remodel them, and I've seen it on I drive bus, and then we had kids to pick up on Monroe Street and around the old downtown neighborhoods over there, and those houses come over for sale, and boom, they're sold. And it's going to be hard to do what you're advocating right now, but you know, but I think we have a few areas that we might be able to do something with, but it's getting few and far between. A lot of those areas are getting built up.
Well, and frankly, that's why we exist, is because this isn't easy. And so essentially what we're asking for is a willing partner to figure out opportunities to make some incremental changes where you all see fit, right? Not where I see fit. So I've kind of cast my vision as an opening volley, and the opportunity here is where can we work together? Where can we find sites across the community where it might make some sense to make some investment to get more housing opportunity across the community? And again, how do we partner with some of our adjacent municipalities where there may be more land availability? And again, I think on the transportation issue, the one thing I want to make sure is clear is it's not intended to be an idealistic scenario, but more a practical economic scenario. I want you all to know that the #1 bicycling city in the United States is Minneapolis. Mm-hmm. So weather doesn't have to be an impending factor. It's more about infrastructure and how we maintain the infrastructure. What happens in Minneapolis is they plow the bike trails first. So at 5 a.m. the plows are out clearing the bike trails before they clear the roads. And again, not telling you that that's the way the priorities should be set for Grand Haven, but it is about how we prioritize where we make investments. And this is entirely an opportunity for me to come to you and say, I see some things that we could work on together, and then for you to say, well, we like 1 and 2, but we don't like 3 and 4, and so we'll just work on 1 and 2 together. So I really appreciate your time and your patience and your willingness to listen, and I hope that we can find several projects going forward to find opportunities to work together on.
All right. No, super. Thank you very much. Yep. No, I wanted to let everybody have their say, and I wanted to let Ryan finish. I can't see calling the work session for 5 minutes
did the
later
right
on.
thing.
So we ran a few minutes over, but I think that's just a good idea. So anyway, at this point, I'm going to then end the work session, and we will transition into our Grand Haven City Council meeting. And we will change personnel here. Thanks, Ryan.
Thanks, Ryan.
Great presentation.
I wondered how he's going to fill an hour, but he did.
He did, yeah.
All right, I'm going to wait for Pat to come back before we start our city council meeting. Oh, all right. Should we, well, we can start and we can start. All right. Well, Pat will be back shortly. We will just start our meeting and invite the pastor to come and do the invocation. So Linda, would you call the roll, please? Yes, I was going to, do that. Yep, no, I was getting it all out there. All right.
Vanessa,
Here.
Bruder,
Here.
Scott,
Here?
Fritz,
Here.
McCallum.
Here. Our invocation this evening will be given by Pastor Marshall Hurtflower, Covenant Life Church. Please remain standing after the prayer for the Pledge of Allegiance.
My name is Marshall Hopeflower, and my wife and I moved to Grand Haven a year ago from Traverse City, Michigan, and we have been more than welcomed in your community and in your town, and that is a representation of you. And so we thank you for the way in which you've welcomed us and been good guests and extended hospitality to us, to our family. So from an outsider looking in, thank you.
All right.
Keep up the good work. Let's
Welcome.
join together in prayer at this time. Father, we thank you for these men and women that are before us that have been called by you to lead. And we give you thanks, Lord, for choosing them, for selecting them, for blessing them. And we pray, Lord, that you would continue to bless them in the difficult work and the tasks that you've placed before them. It can be a thankless job that sometimes maybe you wonder whether or not this is the right place, but just affirm them and let them know they're in the right place. Remind them, Lord, that you have chosen them for this task and for this season and for this calling. And so we're thankful for them, Lord, and we're thankful for their care. We know that the way in which the community cares for its people is an extension of its leadership, and so we're grateful for each of these folks. Pray that you continue to give them your steadfast strength and encouragement each and every day, Lord. Father, we as a family have been so welcomed in this town, and we pray, Lord, that as the seasons shift and change, that as more guests come into Grand Haven, that they indeed would feel welcome also, that we would be good guests and that we would be hospitable to them and that we would welcome them, for you are the one who welcomes all. And so may we take that example that you've given to us, Lord, and welcome others as well. Father, we pray that you'd bless the discussions that take place in this chamber tonight, that you would allow each person to speak with humility and with compassion and with love and care, And may they be good dialogues, good discussions, and fruitful dialogues, Lord, for your community and for the place in which you've allowed us to live. Father, again, we are grateful for Grand Haven. We are grateful for the way in which you've placed us here. And we pray, Lord, that you'd bless this meeting tonight. We pray that you would have all the glory and the honor. We love you, Jesus. We pray this in your name alone. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All righty. At this point, I'm going to, we have a presentation to make, it's Police Week, Michigan Recognition. I'm going to go up to the podium and I'm going to ask our public safety officers to join me up there. I'm going to read this proclamation. Whereas in 1962, President John F. Kennedy proclaimed May 15th as National Peace Officers Memorial Day, and the calendar week in which May 15th falls as National Police Week. Established by a joint resolution of Congress in 1962, National Police Week pays special recognition to those law enforcement officers who have lost their lives on the line of duty for the safety and protection of others. And if this is, I forget the total number of police officers that have died in service this year, but I know that's 2 in the last 2 days. I think 1 in South Carolina and another one in Mississippi. So this is a very, very real problem that we look at, you know, including our own officer that we lost here in Grand Haven. You never know when you leave the house what you're going to run into during the course of the day. Whereas there are more than 800,000 law enforcement officers serving in communities across the United States, including the approximately 17,000 full-time uniformed police officers in Michigan. And whereas members of law enforcement deserve the appreciation and respect of the people of Grand Haven, Michigan for the merit, dignity, bravery, and reliability they exhibit each and every day, we must also honor the sacrifices made by families of police officers, as each day they must face constant fear as their loved ones work to protect us. And whereas in 2018 alone, 163 law enforcement officers were killed and many more assaulted in the line of duty across the country, the names of these dedicated public servants who made the ultimate sacrifice are engraved on the walls of the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial in Washington, D.C. And whereas Michigan's fallen officers will never be forgotten, nor will their service to their respective communities. By choosing to commit themselves to law enforcement, these brave individuals answered the call for service and willingly put their lives in jeopardy. We commend them for recognizing service as a noble career and protecting the public safety, and also all of those who are serving without incident to date. And whereas Grand Haven, Michigan, and all Michigan citizens have turned to members of law enforcement for assistance and support at times of distress, whether they are coping with personal crises or struggling through civil disorder or a natural disaster. Our communities rely on these courageous individuals when it is difficult to stand on our own, and we are indebted to the unwavering public service of our local and state police. We are indeed fortunate and grateful for the contributions of law enforcement officers to the people of this state. Now therefore be it resolved that the members of the City Council declare May 12 through 18, 2019 as Police Week in the city of Grand Haven, Michigan. We publicly salute the service of law enforcement officers in our community, as well as those of our state and nation, and honor police who place their lives on the line for the safety and security of their communities. So again, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple quick words. I didn't really have time to plan anything, but the last few months there have been 7 of us on a shift, and tonight you can see 3. Tonight, one of those young men is at the police academy at Grand Valley State University. He was hired on as a fireman and is now going through academy. The other one is an instructor on our shift, and so there was a time last week when he was called on his normal day off to work during the day, which is also abnormal for him because we work nights, to put in his time doing instruction during the day. So in compensation for that, he has tonight off. So there were 5 of us tonight. The other 2 are down by the hospital helping someone get back to the hospital. So it's just us 3. So this is the type of job where, you know, Chief can say, Sergeant Enlow, go to a city council meeting at 7:30, and I'll plan to be there, but I might not be able to be there. So you have 3 of us tonight, but we are all very much appreciative of your support. Thanks.
A note, Your Honor, we do have the lights on City Hall are going to be blue for the week, and also the lights at Lynchwood Waterfront Stadium will be blue. Hopefully, if Derek can get them blue. I was also hoping the officers might stick around in case Jim goes over 10 minutes on his budget presentation. They could maybe restore order in the room. I think Ryan's got it.
All right, good deal. We are to approval of of the consent and regular agendas. Are there any changes? I know there is one.
Yes, there's the one that we're going to ask City Council to add under the consent agenda, recognizing WAWL as a local nonprofit entity so that they may secure their annual raffle license for their July 27th event at the Eagles Club, where there's an AC/DC tribute band playing, and raffle tickets will be available for $10, but only if you add this to the agenda tonight and subsequently approve that local recognition of WAWL as a local nonprofit entity.
Okay, so that's item N or item MB? B.
If you-
Item
N is in Nancy, yes.
N's is in Nancy, okay. All right. Anything else, any other changes? Anything from up here?
I'm
No.
sorry, there is, I
There is?
apologize.
Okay,
The approval of this is on the consent agenda, so I wanted to get it out there, because often you don't discuss all of these items on the consent agenda. Under items G and H, the Rib Fest event, last year you approved the amplified music until midnight, not 1 AM, as requested in the resolution. I just wanted to make that clear. Now, the Coast Guard event was approved till 1 AM last year. So that one, I guess it's your call how you want to do that. But last year's event, the Rib Fest was only, the event goes till 1, but the amplified music only goes till midnight. And then on the Coast Guard event, last year you did approve both the event and the amplified sound until 1 AM on both Friday and Saturday night of the Coast Guard Festival.
all right, so I have a question. If we, well,
You can alter that back.
we can
in,
alter it
right?
after we accept the, right?
No, we can alter it before.
You can do that now.
All right.
Well, so in G, you're saying that the event goes till 1 AM, but amplified music stops at midnight?
That's what you approved last year.
Well, that's not, but
That's what
then,
you intend to do again, you'd want to change that to midnight.
okay, because it says 1 as written. As presented, it says 1 AM.
Right.
Okay, I got
I
it.
think we did that last year because of the time period and that with the neighbors and stuff at that time.
Mhm.
Where Coast Guard, it doesn't make much difference. It's loud till 3 or 4 in the morning anyways.
I'd suggest amending that to read 12 PM.
Yeah, I'd say
both G
mid-
and H.
On both of them.
Well,
Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, no,
just
no,
on-
not
just
on
on,
the
just on
one.
G.
I
No,
apologize,
no.
just G.
Coast Guard is okay, but
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, and I would agree with that.
the same as last year.
All right,
Make a note that next year should be the same as this year.
There you go.
There you go.
Something like that.
In item H, they've reduced the event by 1 day.
No, that stays the same.
so on both, on August 2nd and August 3rd, to go to 1 AM. That was really,
That was the same thing you did last year.
okay.
H
Is that, I'm guessing that's Friday and Saturday.
H is correct. G needs to be changed to 12.
Second, 3rd, okay.
For amplified music,
For amplified,
not
For
for,
amplified
not, not
music.
for the event.
No,
Okay, yep.
just for amplified music.
right.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended.
I'll second.
Well, we're,
Oh.
We're doing the approval and consent of the regular agendas at this point.
Oh, right. And the regular agenda, not.
Okay, so we have a,
As agenda as amended.
yes, we have a motion to accept the agendas with the changes as noted.
There you go.
Yes.
Thank you.
Second?
All right.
Vanessa?
Yes.
Berger?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Fritz?
Yes.
McCallum?
Yes. All right,
Any questions?
public hearings. We have, I'm going to open the public hearing for proposed budget, millage rates, 1% tax administration fee. Oh, I
Excuse me,
suppose I'm
can we
reading
do
your
a
General
general
business?
call to audience
Oh,
first?
I'm sorry. I passed the,
We're jumping ahead.
oh, I'm
We haven't
back over
even-
here. I was done with the consent agenda. All right. General call to the audience. Sorry. I had turned the page. Would anybody like to address council on any issue that's on their mind? If not, we will move on.
Have to give them the opportunity.
That's right. Oh, I said I turned my page. It wasn't there.
That's Bob Seger.
Continuation, a work session, which we ran over on the other, so we're good. So, Linda, you want to read the consent agenda?
To approve the special work session and regular council meeting minutes of April 22nd, 2019. Approve the bills memo in the amount of $1,057,610.84. Recognize May 12th through 18th, 2019 as Police Week, Michigan, in honor of our law enforcement. Proclaim May 18th through 24th, 2019 as National Safe Boating Week in the city of Grand Haven. Adopt a defined contribution plan for NORA employees employed under an administrative agreement with the city of Grand Haven effective May 1st, 2019, and authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute the necessary documents. Approve an agreement allowing Dale and Shelley Vaughn to the opportunity to sublease their current agreement with the city of Grand Haven to operate Nibbles to Tim and Deborah Reed through the extent of their lease agreement ending in 2020, and authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute the necessary documents. Approve the VFW Ribfest 2019 special event to take place in downtown parking lot number 7 and on First Street between Columbus and Washington on May 24th from 3 o'clock p.m. to 1 o'clock a.m. and May 25th from 10 o'clock a.m. to 1 o'clock a.m. Allow amplified music until 12 o'clock a.m. and permit the consumption of alcohol. Approve the VFW Coast Guard Festival Entertainment tent to be held in downtown parking lot number 7 and First Street between Columbus and Washington on August 2nd from 3 o'clock p.m. to 1 o'clock a.m. and August 3rd from 11 o'clock a.m. to 1 o'clock a.m., allowing amplified music until 1 o'clock a.m. and permit the consumption of alcohol. Approve the Armory Anniversary special event to take place in City Lot number 3 on September 21st, 2019 from 3 o'clock p.m. to 11 o'clock p.m. Allow amplified music until 11 o'clock p.m. and permit the consumption of alcohol. Approve the renewal license agreement for Sunsport Rentals for slips 54, 55, and 56 at the Grand Haven Municipal Marina from May 24th through September 9th for providing seasonal rentals of boats, kayaks, canoes, and jet skis, and authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute the necessary documents. Approve a contract with Wolverine Fireworks for the 2019 4th of July fireworks show in the amount of $23,000 with a rain date of July 5th, 2019, and authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute the necessary documents. Approve the abandonment of fire access easements and right-of-ways located at 19557, 19715, and 19719 North Shore Drive, and authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute the necessary documents. Recognize the Grand Haven Young Professionals Group as a nonprofit organization operating in the community for the purpose of obtaining a charitable gaming license, and recognize the Tri-Cities Broadcasting Foundation Incorporated as a nonprofit organization operating in the community for the purpose of obtaining a charitable gaming license.
All right, that was a lot. Thanks,
So
Linda.
moved.
Wow, second.
So moved.
All right. Bob seconded?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So comments
Hear
or,
it again.
comments or questions on any of these items?
I missed one of them. Pat, item L, regard to the abandonment of fire access easements and right-of-ways at 3 properties on North Shore Drive. I've got Ottawa County GIS on my computer, and I've kind of looked for the easements, and I can't see them on there, but maybe they're just not registered on GIS.
They're not, they're fairly obscure. They're in the title work, And so these were discovered in some title work when somebody was doing some, I imagine there's a sale or some property transaction or a remortgage or something. So they discovered these and they asked us, and we don't need them anymore. We've got fire hydrants out there. So we don't need to get down to the beach and suck water out of Lake Michigan anymore, and haven't in generations. So we really don't need it. And I suspect that in the event there was a conflagration and they had to get at it,
They'd probably let
probably
you go
would,
through, yeah.
with everybody's permission, but maybe Derek can offer more.
Yeah, Derek Gates, Public Works Director. So our attorney, Ron Bolche, just said, make it nice and clean, have the council vote on absolving those. So they actually probably are by proxy of the actual agreement, that it was only given until fire hydrants, but their title work is what brought this up and said, could you do that for us? So.
Okay. Makes sense? Yeah.
Cleans it up.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions? Because I want to just have everybody realize that one of our resolutions was the National Safe Boating Week, May 18th through the 24th, and that is a reminder for, as boating season, comes into, as the weather opens up for that, it's just a very strong reminder to use your life jackets. It's cold water, especially this time of year, very dangerous to fall in. Hypothermia happens fast, but all summer long, just wear those life jackets, because we want to keep people safe on the waters, and that is just a strong reminder about that sort of thing. So I just want to make note of that we have put that on. We do that every year, but it's a reminder to keep safe on the water. Yeah, I think we are ready to vote.
Bruger,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Fritz,
Yes.
Manetza.
Yes.
McCaleb.
Yes. Okay, I think now we are to the public hearing regarding the proposed budget, millage rates. I should let Linda read that. The one of what you, oh no, this is my job. Right, okay. I thought I was doing your job for you.
I can do it if you want.
No, I could. I'll just finish reading because this is fun. I get to be you for a short time. 1% tax administration fee schedule, capital improvement plan for the city of Grand Haven fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2019 and ending June 30th, 2020. To Jim, he emptied the house.
Yeah.
I can't believe they didn't stay.
I think we scared them with Ryan, then we brought Jim up, we got two of them in a row, they're going, wait a minute here, I'm not gonna be here all night.
No, you're not going to be here all night. We have a process that we go through each year, which is called developing a budget. I think I have a picture here. Point that way, right? Welcome to Grand Haven. We talk about boats and water and the lake shore and all the rest of it, and blue is my favorite color, so that's why that picture is up. No other reason. The ship is
Nice job, Jim. Jim is one of our premier photographers around town. He does an excellent job. Oh, you are so.
I have fun with it, that's all. I just get lucky sometimes. I take about 1,000 shots and one of them's good.
That's
Oops, wrong way. Let's see if it goes that way. Okay. City Council puts together a series of goals, has a meeting with the city manager and city clerk during the fall to kind of give us an idea of where we want to go and where you would like to see us focus as staff. The goals indicated for this year include the infrastructure millage election, to organize that and start working on getting all that together. Not sure when we're going to have an election, but it's coming up, and so the planning for it is a very good thing to do longer term. Also discussion on the snowmelt energy source, coordinating with the BLP and evaluation, looking at housing affordability, looking at local energy production. We've always had energy production in Grand Haven and for at least the last 100 years, and it's a question that's out there that needs to be answered as to what goes on. Zoning ordinance amendment, and we also have airport considerations, the future of the airport, Washington Square redevelopment, and Harbor Island Campground has come up every year, I think, for the past 4 or 5, and it's still something that's out there we'd like to consider. We haven't really focused in any direct method on it, and we hope to spend more time with that this year. Gee, where your tax money goes. This is a very simple graphic, although it looks more complex. But when you look at the top dollar compared to the bottom dollar, you see that there's a much larger green section on the bottom dollar. The bottom dollar refers to the non-homestead properties within the city, and that larger green area is actually the school taxes, the 18 mills of school taxes that those individuals pay. The top dollar relates to the homestead properties, and the homestead properties do not have that 18 mills. So there's a difference in the way that the taxes are put out. It's a very highly coordinated process by the city treasurer. I'm proud of what she's been able to do, and it keeps us moving along. Without tax dollars, we can't run the city. Going on. This is a history of the last 30 years with regard to SEV. One point here that's really important to note is that the average was considered, oh, well, property values increase every year. No big deal. Well, that occurred up until 2009. And then when 2009 had its value, we all learned that business cycles do have a down cycle at times. This is what happened in Grand Haven. For Grand Haven, the total amount of reduction over those 3 years was about 8%, compared to other cities which had as much as 45 and 60%. We walked through there pretty readily, and I'm pleased to say that we were able to do some good things all through city policy to make sure that we continued to get as many of the projects done as possible during that time. This next graphic is only up here because look at the bottom blue bars, and you see that they went up for a while and then they stabilized out, and now they're going down. And that's because the state actions to reduce personal property taxes, reduce personal property investment within the communities. Reducing the investment reduces taxes. Reducing taxes, you have less money to work with. It's not really a happy thing to talk about. There's some basis to say that the personal property taxes should be considered or continued forward. However, this is what we are living with. So we have continuing pressures to reduce the amount of revenue that comes in within the city of Grand Haven, and that's by state charge. So we go into what has really happened. In 1994, there was Proposal A, and what we agreed to with Proposal A is to create something called taxable value rather than state equalized value. State equalized value is required to be 50% of the true cash value of a property. Taxable value is based on an increase in value up to a maximum of the state calculated CPI, Consumer Price Index. And so you do see that the taxable value is down lower than what the state equalized value is and varies a bit more. What was interesting in Grand Haven was that when we did have the downslide on the state equalized value, we did not have as much of a downslide in the taxable value of properties. And so that really, the taxable value is what you levy your taxes on. So that's how we pretty much made it through during that time frame. The lower graphic talks specifically about the non-homestead and homestead taxes, and the millage rates went down in 1995 because of Proposal A. The 18 mills for standard operations for schools was picked up on a 6 mill basis from the state and across the state, and so it reduced the local schools millage down by that 18 mills, and has pretty much stayed stable to that. The two graphs, or the two lines, pretty much match each other going out. We go a little farther, and here's our millage history. Lots of colors, lots of interesting information to look at. When you see this in the budget document, you'll see in the upper part, you see a lot of cells that are in yellow. And the reason for that is because I was trying to mark out all of those years between the past year and the current year. Was there a change? And there seems to be changes each year for the various kinds of millages that go on. The lower graphic, the city millage levies, gives you an idea of what levies are specifically city-generated or city-related. And yes, it also includes the Council on Aging and the roughly 0.5% millage for roads, which the county does. But those were all originally created through the action of City Council to allow us to levy the tax to pass that forward to those organizations. It looks like that the total millage will be, a non-stone homestead total millage will be 52.9439 mils. The homestead millage will be 34.9439, which is there's your 18 mils of school taxes. Moving along, here's the millage rates, listed all out for you. We are indicating that the general operating millage has really four components. One is general operations at 9.6314, there it is. And then we have millage for streets, it's at 0.25 mils, an additional 0.1 mils for streets as well. And then also a additional 4939, which is not included in the local operating millage. That's shown farther down on the report. But then we also have the brownfield millage that we set up at 0.75 mils to come to a total of, what is that, 10.7314 mils. That's your normal operations millage. That's the millage that you have by city charter to be able to modify up and down. You could levy as much as 12 mils, 12.1 mils, but you are currently levying at 10.73 mils there. We have other millages that are city-related. Obviously, the community center millage, which will run off probably in another 2 years. Then the transportation millage for Harbor Transit, 0.58 mils. The Tri-Cities Museum millage was revoted last year, and so that's back up to 0.25 mils. That was a Headley override millage, so that brought it back up. But the other millage is the Council on Aging millage, which is 2446 or 2445 up there. Got to get better glasses one of these days. Likewise, shown on this sheet is also the millages for bond proposals, and those stay at the 1 mil and the 0.9 mils that we charged last year. Those millages can vary up and down depending on the cost of the debt service for that given year. There's also a maximum of a certain amount of money, 1.5 times the amount of debt service cost that we can store in the fund. So there is a slight bit of variability, but we have to be careful to make sure that we don't put too much into that reserve, but enough to make sure we can pay debt service payments. The last two are the the MSDDA millage at 0.73 number here. Good Lord, I don't have it on my list. No, not 7733. There it is, 1.7736 mils. And then we also have the county road millage. I keep that one forward here because originally the city had that 5 mils when the county was asking for that millage. They suggested that what we would do in Grand Haven is we would levy that 5 mils. We suggested back to them, well, then those mills belong to the city and should be returned back to the city. And that's exactly what happened. So we kept that 0.85 mils at that same level at that time. Continuing on, we get into city funds. The city is much more than just one business. We have about 39 different funds that we deal with on a regular basis. About $81 million is the total revenues, expenses of about $82 million. Breaking that out in large components, we really have 3 areas related to the city. You have the tallest bars on the right side there are the Board of Light and Power revenues and expenses. The middle height is all the other city funds, and then the next highest is the third highest is the general fund. So you get a really good idea of that. So you've got BLP on one side, you've got the general fund on the other, and you got all other, of the 37 different funds listed in that middle. The city also does the financial and administrative works for the Harbor Transit, Sewer Authority, and water plant, and we have included those here just to show that that information is public as well. Going farther on, we look at larger city funds. I've broken this out into two different sheets. The first column is the general fund, and that's truncated. It's about $12.9 million in terms of that. The rest of them are all a little bit larger there so that you can see the variation between the various types. It also includes two sections on the right side, the component units, which are really the brownfield and the DDA, and then the four of the intergovernmental authorities. Those are toward the right side. When we continue on, we see the smaller city funds, and these are much smaller in relation to the other ones. They probably wouldn't even show up on the earlier graphic, so it seemed better to still point those out and list all of those. It gives you some idea of both the complexity of the work that's here and the amount of things that we have to keep. A fund is a self-balancing group of accounts. It is essentially a separate business from all the other funds. And so when we're doing our work upstairs, we can't just take money from anywhere and use it for any purpose. It has to be from the proper fund and properly accounted for. So let's go to the general fund. Revenue by type is $12,497,000 and some change. And primarily that's taxation. That's 52% of that, the large blue section, is taxation dollars that come in. Then your next largest area is payments in lieu of taxes, down toward the bottom in red, and that's about 17%. 9% is in medium blue on the upper left side, the administrative fees. There it is. And that's about 9% of the total. And state shared revenue is about 8% of the total, which is in teal blue, I guess, or whatever that color happens to be. I'm half colorblind. Back to state shared revenue, though, it's important to note that the agreements made in 1994 didn't necessarily come out to the way we thought they would. Essentially, the rate of increase shown by the pink bars up there indicates what would have happened if indeed we continued the same rates of increase that were available in 1994 or earlier. What happened is that the federal or the state government decided that they needed the money more than we did, and began to shave off the amount of money that they send back to the local communities. As you can see, what's basically happened is that the funds that have come to the local communities have basically matched. I can show you any city you want, it will show up this same way. And it's really kind of difficult to look at as far as I'm concerned, because that blue line floating over the top of this is the increase in state tax revenues that they generate, and you see that's on a continuing increasing basis. So what they've done is they've been able to line their pockets pretty nicely, but they really have put some damage on the local unit. If we had received the amount of money we would have received based under the pre-1994 in this year in state shared revenue, it would be over $4 million, and we're only getting about $1 million. Something to keep vitally involved with as far as lobbying with the state and trying to get them to understand that we provide services, we need the help. This is the breakout of the general fund expenses by department, $13 million. And basically there's, the public safety comes up as the largest percent, about 38%. And I do need to stop here and mention that public safety in many communities is much closer to 70% of their general fund rather than ours, which is at 38%. There's a couple of reasons for it. But primarily, we are continuing the track record that we had for many years of making sure we look at each expense and determine whether we really need to make those expenses happen or not. I'm real proud of our public safety that they've kept this number as low as possible. The general government amount is 24% of the total, and that includes city council, city manager, human resources, city clerk, finance, treasury, assessing, information technology, attorney, planning, building inspection, and insurance. I'll take a breath now. The next largest area is the green on the left side, which is 23%, which is public works and maintaining all that. That includes parks and the major activities, rights of ways, major operations going throughout the city in the general fund. Recreation and cultural at 6%, which includes community center, Mulligan's Lodge, Coast Guard Festival, and Musical Fountain. And then the last two are really important to remember, and that is one of the reasons why the other percentages are lower than they could be, is that we do a lot of transferring out of the general fund of money into other funds for either operational or capital projects. And we do this in order to support those other funds and those other issues. So in the blue, the bright blue there is 3%, which goes to the Public Improvement Fund, and we're looking at about $405,000 to go there. To the other funds, that's about 6%, and that relates to transfers to major and local streets, the 2014 bond debt service, $90,000 to the DDA TIF, $21,000 to the EDC. Please stop me anytime you want. I'm not sure if I've reached my 10, and I really don't want to, get shot for it. Going on.
Just tased.
What's that?
We wouldn't shoot you, just tase you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That might be good. I could use the jolt. Let's go on to expenses by type. And this is where we try to give an idea of what do you really use these dollars for. It's nice to know that they go to various departments, but what are the dollars actually used for? And the two largest pieces of the pie there relate to 67% of the costs, and that's wages and benefits, and in the general fund alone. This does not include wages that would be paid by the water fund, the sewer fund, major and local streets, motor pool, and other funds that have employees doing work for them. The transfers out again shows up at 3%, $405,000, and the transfers to other funds shows up again at 6%, up toward the top. And then the other major piece there is professional and contractual services, and that's about 8%. So gives you a better understanding of what our actual dollars are used for. We show utilities, transportation, lodging, motor pool costs as well. Things get done by people. I don't know another way to say it. If you don't have the staff, you're really not going to get something done. And so this has been a constant, ever since we had the dip in 2009, we've been keeping up this spreadsheet to show, or these graphics to show that we are holding our own in terms of the staff, and that there really has not been a significant change in the number of staff working for the city over time. We have an organization chart, and this is the one for this year. Basically what it shows is not only the various departments and the layout of how those departments work, but off to the right side, you have a list of all the various boards and commissions that are there. They are also a part of the organization of the city, and they give directives as well to the staff to make them operate properly. Historical net assets. In 1994, when I arrived, there had been some concern that the city had used up all its reserves for various projects prior to that point. It was my task to try and get us out of that hole, and as you can see over time, we've certainly made a significant difference in holding dollars available in the general fund for general fund use, as well as public improvement fund. And public improvement fund is obviously more volatile because money will come in, we'll save it there for a while, and then we'll use it for various, normally capital projects that go on, and then we'll start building it up and save it again. You'll note in 2017 up there, you see a sharp dip in the general fund holdings, and that's because we transferred $2 million from the general fund to the public improvement fund for that year. This is another way of looking at that, the previous graphic. The top graph shows the two different kinds of transfers. We have one set of transfers which are the operational transfers based on the dollars that come into the general fund for primarily the community center. But then we also have the purple ones up there, which are specific time frames when the city council has directed us to move revenue over to the public improvement fund. The lower one, again, kind of mirrors the one on the prior page, but this shows the cash reserves, the actual cash available each year. And this is another way of looking at cash. The area below, well, the purple area and below are all city operating funds. And you see they bounce up and down depending on what activities are going on in each given year. We also look at, that would include the general fund and special revenue funds. Those are governmental funds along with the cemetery fund. And then we have enterprise funds and capital projects in there. The two the two areas on the top are the brownfield and DDA revenue coming in, and also revenue coming in for the infrastructure bonds. This one is one of my favorites because it basically shows what you've been doing for many years, and especially since 2007 and forward, where the city decided that while we were doing good things during the prior years, we made a change through an engineering study suggesting that we had quite a number of issues out there that needed to be fixed. So that was basically set us up on getting some bonds and getting projects done. It also includes the brownfields, the Grand Landing brownfield, the investment there, the downtown TIF investment, and even includes the Lynn Sherwood Waterfront Stadium, which is in purple in the 17 and 18 and 18-19 columns there. Just in case you're wondering, the total amount of outstanding debt is approximately $60,000, and much of that will be paid off significantly by 2022 when we take some of the Grand Landing debt and close that out. We do additional research and finance to make sure things are going as smoothly as we can. This graphic usually comes out in January and talks about the DDA TIF. The key points to note here is that between the green line and the red line toward the top, that's an annual savings that we did by doing by selling some refunding bonds for the DDA TIF. So that reduced the cost by about $25,000 a year. And then we're looking at this time, our plans are as administration that eventually the DDA will be earning revenue more than they'll have in their outstanding bonds. And that's that purple area that's there, that would be the potential time frame that dollars might be returned back to the general fund for all the money that had been going off to solve making sure those bonds don't go to a deficit position. Grand Landing has been its own issue as far as that goes over time, and sometimes I think a few gray hairs popped out because of it, but I think that that's a part of the nature of the beast in trying to do some things. When you go out to do some things, you do have a lot of risk, but you can get a lot of reward. These two graphs show they're actually the same information, but these two graphs show that a couple of years back we were looking at about another $570,000 to come out of the general fund in the upper graph in red. But down below, you don't see that red there anymore. It seems like we are getting enough revenue in from taxation, from the taxation on the Grand Landing property and additional taxation, the .75 mils that we've been storing all these years to be able to use at this time. So things are looking better all the time. And as the sun rises in the east, this is a picture out of my window over at City Hall, which is why I like my upstairs eastern corner there. Thank you to everybody for all your work. I can't tell you the number of hours and that everybody puts in on it. To be able to narrow this down to 10 or 15 minutes is really difficult to do. I hope I got the points that you needed to hear tonight.
Absolutely. Well, thanks a lot, Jim. You know, the best news to me out of all of this is that the amount that Grand Landing, when it comes final, that we have to throw in there gets smaller all the time, and I think that's very gratifying. And you know, for the growth that's there and the way that you've managed this whole financial project, that it's very gratifying that we're not going to be facing some huge balloon in a couple of years, that it's
And the good
gonna
news is
level out.
that TIF is going to do that much more good for the general fund, because the city council approved an agreement with the Brownfield Authority indicating that we would like to continue to bring those dollars from the Grand Landing TIF and bring those dollars back to the general fund. They were levied against the citizenry of the city, and so now this can be a ready resource for additional infrastructure projects after 2022. That's really kind of exciting to see.
I have one other question on the personal property tax slide way in the beginning. Now, it looks from the graph that even though the personal property tax is declining, or has the last 4 years, but at the graph at the top shows that we're pretty much level. So that's being, you know, it looks like it's being made up by an increase in residential values.
Essentially, yes.
So we are really not, we'd be that much farther ahead if we still had that personal property tax, but we're not.
Personal property tax is primarily placed on commercial and industrial properties. There are some small issues with personal property in the residential sector. But primarily you're seeing, and this is statewide, you're seeing more and more cities paying a larger percentage of their general fund is funded by property taxes. And that really, you're looking at the local unit, and primarily the residential properties in Grand Haven are carrying the larger burden.
I thought that was kind of an interesting graph that with the decrease that it's at the top, it's remaining fairly, it's been made up by increases in other places. So, right. Anybody else have comments?
No. Jim, on the brownfield and downtown combined downfield, DDA revenue TIF debt analysis graph, it's one of your last ones that you've got on there. Is that, and I'm having a hard time reading the numbers, but it looks like it's 2017 on the left. We're almost there.
That one?
There we go. So is it 2017 on the left, and then by the time it's right-sided, so to speak, it's 2028?
That's when it gets paid out.
Okay, gotcha.
I do have a version that goes back to 2005 if you'd like me to go get it.
Oh, no, this is good. You're good. You're good. I'm looking forward to that getting paid off. That's great. And then just to double down on what Jerry said as far as the Grand Landing debt goes, that's dynamite that we don't have that red bar in the middle. So good work on that. And you had mentioned something about refunding the DDA. I thought I saw that in a note somewhere. Doing another refund on that?
We've had 3 different refunding bonds, and we're going to have a 4th one sold tomorrow.
Oh, tomorrow, okay.
That's the 2009 DDA bond.
Okay.
And we're looking to pick up a significant reduction in the total cost. which will then actually be a reduction in the amount the general fund is going to have to move forward for that in the future. So that's a big help.
And so the budget that we're approving tonight does not include that because it hasn't happened yet, that savings.
The budget
potential
you're
savings.
approving tonight is next year. The action, because it occurred before June 30, I will have to make sure that it gets
We
put
amend
into this year's budget.
Into this year's
with the-
budget, okay.
Because in the shortfall for this year, or for this next year, is only 80,000, well, only 80,000, but that's way down from 140 that it was a few years ago, so it's all good news.
Yep, as the property values rise, and that's kind of the deal with the TIFs, is that as property values rise, then they're going to pay for those costs that were needed to be spent for various public amenities that were placed in those areas. And so the hope is that you build something, and then you invest time and the increases in property values in those areas in order to pay for the debt service on all of that, and thereby have the TIF actually pay off for the benefits in those areas. It's not worked as good as we would like it in the DDA, but I think that you always take those kind of costs and look at them. You've got some patient capital that you're working with, and you just have to be patient in getting the dollars back.
Yeah, talking about patience, and I think that's what Roger was saying about when he was mayor, about patience with the Grand Landing in due time. It's not exactly what we hoped for, but at least it's something, and it's paying the bills, and hopefully we can get them to finish building out what they promised us, and that would help us out enormously, even more. It would come a lot quicker. But Jim, I gotta say thank you for your hard work and steering that ship. You know, we're going down that line with Grand Landing. We need somebody to help steer us, and you gave us the right information, the right way to go with it. So I commend you very much on that. So thank you so very much. And I'm pretty happy with the way the budget is set right now today. So move forward.
What else?
And I got to say that as the years have gone by, I've enjoyed watching the progress on these graphs as they've moved this way, and things have gotten better with time. Denny and I were new on council when that 3/4 mil was put in place to support Grand Landing debt, because we saw that big red bar coming in the distance, and we worked against that with setting money aside, and that was a positive thing to do. It wasn't comfortable at the time, but it was necessary. And as values have come up there, that's mitigated that. And like Mike says, may not be what we had in mind originally, but it's helping pay the bills. And that was where we were at when we approved it. We said, well, let's get this off the backs of the taxpayers. And of course, anytime you have a TIF, you always have the assumption that you won't get a 2007 again, where property values go down, they're supposed to go up. That's how these things are predicated. So, well, thank you for the work on the budget. It's a complex budget. There's a lot of pieces in the air, and appreciate that you can keep them all straight. It is what you do.
All righty. Thanks very much. So I will close that public hearing on the budget, and we will now open the public hearing regarding 2019 Community Development Block Grant Application for Project Riverwatch through the Michigan Economic Development Corporation. So is anyone here to address that issue? All righty, sounds like a plan.
So before you today is the official grant application for the Riverwatch project that has come before you a number of times leading up to today. That project includes the burying of the overhead power lines, the addition of ADA accessible sidewalks down to the Grand River Boardwalk, the deck overlook area and removal of those trees by One South Harbor, and the boardwalk aesthetic improvements. And just a reminder that grant The entire project scope amounts to $1.7 million, with the grant applying for close to 1.6 million of that through the MEDC, with a 10% match of $177,369, which would be absorbed by the BLP. And just a note in the packet before you, the line item budget's a little dated, so any mention of a shade structure has been removed from that budget.
And you added it as, what did you have in the spot then? It has different wordings for it now.
Yeah, I believe it was seating, seating pedestrian area improvements.
Yeah, so the 100,000 is still in there yet, so very good. As long as we keep that in there, we can.
Absolutely.
Very good.
So the conceptual project plan that's in our packet was the original plan, not before we said we didn't want that gazebo.
Correct.
Okay, just want to clear that up.
Yep.
Yeah, which it just essentially in that proposal laid out the location for it and just titled a portion of the funding as shade structure. So we just relabeled that to be more flexible.
Proposed pedestrian gathering area.
Yeah.
Or plural.
Well, without the potential grant money, we wouldn't be considering this project, so I think it's great that that's available and that we can apply for it, and that it will come, so. If we couldn't leverage our local money like this, we'd be so limited in what we could offer to the public.
The heat's still working?
Yeah, it's
Yeah, we got,
pretty darn warm in here.
We spend most of the winter freezing in here, so.
yeah, it averages out just right.
Right?
Wow.
Any other comments for a public hearing?
No, I think
Everyone has a
that,
plan engineer.
Then we can go into our discussion then.
pardon?
And close the public hearing.
Oh, yeah, I just wait, that's,
Then
we
we can go
will.
into discussion.
Anyone else want to address this public hearing? If not, we will close the public hearing. And then I will ask Linda to read the item E.
To approve a 2019 Community Development Block Grant application for Project Riverwatch through the Michigan Economic Development Corporation and authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute the necessary documents.
Is there a motion?
So moved?
Second?
Moved and seconded. All right, comments or questions regarding this project?
It's nice to know that it's uncontested and that we have a good chance, we'll be getting the 1.5 million, yeah. So, can do a quite great deal for our waterfront and should make it a bit more pedestrian friendly and also a bit more for the handicap accessible. Those ramps and stuff will be able to use instead of have what we have now, instead of full tilt down the hill. If you're in a wheelchair, I tell you, those things are terrible. They're not even the code, so it's going to be nice to have everything accessible because we have a lot more people that are disabled coming to Grand Haven than we've ever had before, which is a good thing for us. We need to be more diverse. So I'm very happy with it, and I'm ready to move forward on this project and get our money and go forward.
I agree. I think my favorite aspect of this is opening up that view shed, opening up that area of the river and making it, that view more accessible and having a deck up there that it's going to be another great gathering spot. And I think this is going to be a real enhancement to our waterfront and to our walk. So looking forward to this project happening.
Well, I guess we're heading down the row here. I'm, the dollar line item on page 130 on our agenda, we're leveraging $177,000 locally for almost $6 million from the state. And this started a while back with a very contentious debate on burying the power lines on Harbor. and I had no idea that it would take on this type of a life and mind of its own as far as leveraging that conversation for a lot more investment in the downtown and the waterfront. So Pat, kudos to you and your staff. Kudos to everyone who's helped out on this grant process to put us in a position to get that much money coming back into our community. I'm blown away by that number. So thank you everyone for all your work and for sticking to it. That's all I got.
Yeah, that's very significant, and like I said, without this grant money coming in, we couldn't be doing this project. We probably would not be approving a project, or a very limited one. It's also important to understand that if we didn't do this project, this money wouldn't come into our community in the first place. So there's two sides to that. Why do the project if we have to put some money with? Well, we bring that money in the community through the form of the grant that gets spent here. We end up with a much better waterfront. We get the money spent here, and we don't put much with it. So the project is inherently worth doing simply because the grant's available.
I'm just glad we came up with the Harbor Avenue project. I think everything worked out together for it. It all just fell together for us, and we got the grants we needed. And like you said, for a small investment it's not a small investment, $100-some thousand, but still over what we got out of it. Really was a significant bond we got out of that, and how much work we can get done with $100,000. It's unbelievable. But it all started with the Harbor Avenue project. And just all came together really great.
And we we are short on revenue sharing from the state, but we are able to really cash in literally on some of these grant opportunities that are available. And I think that's a combination of going after the grants, having matching funds, and just being in the right place at the right time, and our work of our administrative staff in getting these applications in and being able to get these grants to come to Grand Haven. We are a fortunate community to land these projects. So we got the projects to do, and we were able to land the money to do it. And so it makes that, it doesn't make the revenue sharing pain go away, but it eases it a bit when we can land these great projects. So thanks to all of our folks who make that possible.
I'd like to add to that, if I may.
Go ahead.
Is that I got to commend Mr. Bonamy on his hard work in keeping us in the black, because some of the fact is, without the extra cash that we have, they wouldn't be able to apply for these grants. We're so able and ready. We usually have our plannings ahead of time on a lot of projects we do, and we have the cash to mount up to, and if we need to come up with a little bit more, we have it available for us so we can get these grants and have it come back to our community. So I want to say thank you for our finance department for being so frugal and making sure that we have the money available to do projects like this, that we have the cash available or any projects we do in this town. So I want to thank him, and I want to thank the administration and everybody that works hard on all the grants, not just necessarily this one grant, but all the grants that we have. This whole community, we've been very fortunate that over the years of all the infrastructure grants that we've gotten in that order, is that we've had the money there to go after those grants and get them, where other communities do not have that kind of ability, and they have to be looked over. So I just want to say thank you for keeping us in the black and making sure that we have the cash flow to do these kind of projects.
Absolutely. I think we might be ready to vote.
Fritz?
Yes.
Manetza?
Yes.
Bruger?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
And Caleb?
Yes. All right. New business.
First item is to approve a temporary use permit for a smoothie hut and pop-up retail shop from May 7th through October 1st, 2019 at 233 Washington Avenue. The administration recommends approval.
Is there a motion?
Moved.
Support.
It's been moved and seconded. And Pat, can you explain what this, I know we had the smoothie hut before, but we didn't have the pop-up shops.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. This is it's typically called Sherwood Forest, or the spot next to Erin's coffee shop. And Erin is here tonight. She can answer any questions you have. We've got a strong interest in having something there because it tends to help keep an eye on some of the loitering that goes on in there, and it's been the one effective measure, and Erin's managed to have some assertive staff, and she's assertive herself, helps keep a lid on things down there, and it pays off for the city and public safety. We don't have to have our law enforcement officers down there repeatedly because there's just a general sense of order that is imposed. But if you've got questions, Erin's here. I don't know if maybe she wants to tell you a little bit about what's going on down there.
Oh, Raziel, I finally got his name down. I had what a great employee he is. I don't know if he helps keep order, but he's quite the guy, so.
Completely. Well, we're looking to do the same thing at Jumpin' Java as we've done in the last 2 summers, is to put up our smoothie hut, which we call the Tadpole, next to the shop. So it's our shed on wheels. And we'll have, I think, 4 tables and chairs out this year. We lost a table last year, so I'm not sure if we had 5 or 6 before, but we're down a table. The pop-up shop is just going to be the new owners of the Fifth Third space. It's the daughter of the new owner. She wants to run like a t-shirt, like she prints t-shirts and makes pottery, and she wants to be able to like put up like a tailgate tent or 2 tailgate tents out there on the busy weekends and times during the summer to sell some products. That's her job for the summer.
A question I had, that it says they're tents, which makes me worry about their stability. So are they, I don't want, something to blow away, or is it
They would be weighted down.
secure?
Yes, we'd make sure they were weighted down so that they wouldn't blow away. And if it is that windy, we'd probably just have her go inside.
Oh, God.
It might be safer to be inside if it's that windy. That area is actually really secluded and pretty safe.
Oh, within, back by the trees?
Yeah, so I wouldn't really worry about that, but I think she really plans on making strategic plays for the good weather days.
Okay, all right.
So these tents will only be up on certain days, they won't be up all summer?
Correct, and
Yeah.
they'll be like put up and taken down every night that she's out.
So they won't be up overnight at any time?
No.
Yeah. Yeah, because reading our packet, it sounded like they would be put up early summer and be there for months.
No, that's just a smoothie hut.
Okay, well, that's fine, but I'm just worried about the tents because and I was gonna ask too, what was the DDA's take on this, or was there an opinion? I don't know, Jerry, if you know, if the DDA had an opinion on tents in this area?
The DDA hasn't really been asked about this, but then I understand since it's private property, I don't know if they have to ask. If they wade in, they say, well, we have some of that stuff available in our brick and mortar stores. So that's, but it has not come before the DDA board.
I don't think it's so much the merchandise, it's just the appearance of having a tent as a pop-up as opposed to, there was one time that you talked about having little wooden sheds sitting there.
Yeah, that was not
We
popular.
didn't like that either, so that's why. But, if it's a temporary, once in a while, not every night, not all summer, then that makes me feel much more comfortable with it.
Yeah.
It's one of those, try it and see what it does, because there's a lot less at stake here. It might work great.
Right. Yeah, and we pretty much only run the smoothie hut Thursday to Sundays through most of the summer. We open it pretty much every day during 4th of July weeks and Coast Guard weeks, and if the weather looks really good. But for the most part, we kind of just do Thursday to Sunday, and I've spoken to the owners as well, so I think she'd only be out there on the same days we're going to be out there anyway, because foot traffic wise, it kind of works out good for both of us.
Okay, yeah, because that was some of the concerns that I had is that it's not there all summer long, and that it is put up and taken down and taken away in the evening.
So Erin, thanks for championing a budding entrepreneur who's looking at an opportunity to create something. And I think that's one of the beauties of these pop-up shop concepts. And I'd love to see more of them in Grand Haven. So this is great. So
Yeah.
thank you for that.
Me too. Yes, thank
Yep.
you.
Very good. I'm happy.
All right, we're happy. Okay, I think we're ready to vote.
Manessa,
Yes.
Berger,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Fritz,
Yes.
McCallum.
Yes.
Thank you very much for your time.
All right. Looking forward to the smoothies. Next item.
Next item is to approve the purchase in the not-to-exceed price of $90,449.18 from West Michigan International and $790,138 from Truck and Trailer Specialties for the replacement of a 5-ton salt truck under the My Deal governmental purchasing program totaling $169,587.18. The administration recommends approval.
Is there a motion?
Moved.
In support.
Moved and seconded.
With one caveat, maybe, I think you said $790,000
Hmm?
vehicle. Did I catch that, or did I just hear things?
I hope you're hearing things.
I see it written down correctly, but I think you said $790,000.
I put an extra zero in there.
Yeah.
$79,138.
Yeah, for those listening at home, we're not buying a $790,000
About that?
salt.
I want,
Didn't even catch it when I said it.
Okay. That's it.
we get to help drive.
Yeah. Somebody help driving that.
Well, Derek is here to tell us about the very expensive salt truck. So.
Derek Gatis, Public Works Director. Last July 17, you authorized the purchase of a plow truck under the current budget. We just received that less than 2 weeks ago.
Wow.
So this truck is actually coming out of next year's budget, which you just had a public hearing on. We're asking for authorization to put in the purchase order now, because they added an additional 30 to 60 days on top of that time frame. So if we do it now, I'm expecting it in April of next year to show up. So it won't be for next plowing season. Supply has been really hard on the automotive industry, at least getting the vehicles to us. Some cruisers have been delayed, and some other trucks as well. So the next agenda item is the same thing. We ordered some vehicles in August of last year, and we still haven't received them. So, yeah, this is a standard replacement of one of our salt trucks. It's 12 years old, and it'll be retired to the airport. And that one that is in the airport is 1998. So it's 21 years old, I believe. So it'll be 22 when that thing finally sees its final retirement. So,
All right. Any questions about the salt truck? No. Why does it take so long? Is it because it's My Deal?
no, it's actually international. Is the because we go it's the government discount. I don't know if we take a back seat, but if you show up with enough cash, you probably could get one tomorrow.
Okay.
We're not interested in that deal, so we'd rather plan and save money. But they are months away. That's just for the cab and chassis is 9 going on 10 months. Truck and trailer actually then puts the spreader on it, the underblade, and gets it ready to be a plow truck. That time frame is extending a little bit just because we have a lot of new plow trucks that are aging. There was a big window in the Great Recession that a lot of people put off their trucks. Unfortunately, that creates a bigger demand down the road. So there's a bigger demand for it today than there was 7 years ago or 10 years ago.
Wow. All righty.
When we make I guess my only question is in pertaining to the timing of this as far as the budget season goes. And when we actually make the payment. Are we writing a check for $169,000 tomorrow? Because that's a lot of money that we could be earning some interest on if we're authorizing that. So there you go.
No, actually, you're authorizing the purchase of it, so we can give a purchase order. They won't just order you one for that on our word. But we don't pay for the truck international until it's actually received by Truck and Trailer, which that was about 4 months ago. So last July, we won't pay for it until truck is received by Truck and Trailer, and then we don't pay Truck and Trailer until we receive the truck. So actually, the one we received 2 weeks ago, if wasn't in tonight's authorization, the bills memo, then I'm sure it's coming. It's when we receive it.
Okay. And then as far as timing goes, and I guess this would be the shaking your magic 8 ball and seeing what's going to happen down the road in the future. But when it comes to roads and infrastructure, there's a certain time of the year when we put stuff out for bid because we're going to get better pricing. Given that we're not going to get this until after the snow season next year, is there a better time for us to be making a purchase like this toward the end of summer or middle of summer or something like that, or is it pretty stable all the way across?
It's pretty stable with these trucks. A lot of the auto industry gets, those cost increases come in July. August, when the new vehicles come out. So my deal runs, this is the same price that we purchased in last year, so, for the actual truck.
What I translated that is if we can get our purchase order in before June or July, we're better off.
Yeah, for sure.
Got it. All right. Thanks, dear.
Yeah, I worked in the aerospace industry for 30 years, and the order book for jet engines is about 11 years. So if you order one now, it's 11 years before you get it. And there's not a lot of advantage to waiting a few months to try to get a better price, because you're just getting in line. So I get that part. And your explanation makes me more comfortable reading your motor pool vehicle replacement evaluation sheet. Because looking at this, it says that, you know, the vehicle mileage hours are not up to replacement schedule yet. 12 years old, but it will be 13 by the time it's replaced. Well, how much downtime do you have with this vehicle? You describe it as a frontline vehicle. It's pretty critical to operations, and you have in here that it's costing more than $2,000 annually for repairs. How much downtime do you have with it now?
This one was actually down our first 3 saltings that went out. So, in fact, both of our large salt trucks were down at one point this winter, and we had just a little small truck at one point one weekend that we were hoping we didn't need to salt a whole lot. So, you know,
Notice he didn't tell you that till May. Yeah, thanks.
I guess we didn't ask, did we?
He's holding his breath all through.
Oh, yeah. No, you know, they are critical, and they do go down. A lot of times, you know, when these pieces of equipment go down, just to change some air brakes on that thing will cost over $2,000. So it's very expensive. You want to be ahead of that curve.
Well, yeah. I mean, I've worked with a lot of equipment over the years that was very, very old because it was industrial equipment. So I'm accustomed to putting off purchases till you must replace them. But if it's critical and if it's down as much as you described, then we need to proceed.
All right, I think we're ready to vote.
Kruger?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Fritz?
Yes.
Vanessa?
Yes.
McCallum?
Yes. And next item.
Next item is to approve the purchase in the not-to-exceed price totaling $24,065 from Preferred Chrysler for the purchase of a half-ton truck to be used for administrative purposes. The administration recommends approval.
Is there a motion?
So
Second?
All right.
Okay, so last year we had this administrative vehicle in, and we had some other needs. So we took it out, we put it in this year. Right now, the vehicle that we were supposed to, we do a lot of hand-me-downs in our motor pool operation. So the hand-me-down that was supposed to be replaced last year is an 06 Escape. It was supposed to go out of service, and we kept it another year, and it's on its last leg. Literally, we want to put any money into it. It's the one you see Matt Wade driving around from time to time. So again, the vehicles to order them now is the lead time is just extending. Especially one of the key factors that is our color yellow that we order. So school bus yellow, they wait till we get so many of them. We don't want to change. We want that. It's more of a planning thing. So this is actually will come out of next year's budget. We won't get it before probably August, but I don't know if that Escape is going to last that long. So we're just trying to do everything we can, and again, get an order in, get in line.
you don't like those green ones I ordered that one time, huh? It's just because I couldn't get yellow then, but yeah, we had to go with green. But yeah, they're fastly disappearing now, though.
Yeah, and you know, and like we did get one in about a month ago, and it came in the wrong yellow. And it's like, well, okay, so that sets us back as well.
Yes, which one of these does not belong, right? It's the Sesame Street thing. Which one, no, it's one of these is not like the other, that's.
Oh, yeah.
Singing the song.
Being in the painting industry, I was talking with the guys from Michigan State Police with that State Police Blue. They say that if you park the cars right out there, they can spell whatever you want out there. That's how different shades of blues there are in that, so they all come close. As long as it's yellow, it's good. I'm glad to see you replacing that Escape. I don't even want to go there. You're right, that is pretty bad for them to be driving around in, and it's a maintenance nightmare. So
Need Matt Wade to come back every time that he takes that thing out.
Will he be back?
It's pretty bad.
All right. Any other comments?
I guess you don't drive farther than you can push it back.
That's right.
True.
Put a tether on it and you can just pull it. I think we're ready to vote.
Scott?
Yes.
Fritz?
Yes.
Vanessa?
Yes.
Ruger?
Yes.
And Caleb?
Yes. All right, and item D.
Item is to approve the easement agreement for an underground water main as proposed by Grand Haven Charter Township and DEG Development LLC in reference to the Lakeshore Gardens site development along Robbins Road, and authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute the necessary documents. The administration recommends approval.
All right, is there a motion?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
And Bob will second it. Okay.
This is, this agreement was brought to me by the township. Mark Roberka must have stayed all night. You might want to just hear him. No, I'm just kidding. If he wants to say anything.
Hey, bring him up.
This is a reference to a water main, technically a water service that feeds D&W, that the township has been in discussions with D&W to bring in another water feed to the Lakeshore Gardens. So our attorney, Ron Bolche, is also township's attorney at the moment. And anyways, he, you know, with the research, we didn't have any records saying we owned it. So this little paragraph is just being, stating that we have no interest in it, and we're not opposed to Grand Haven Township taking over that water main to service them as well. So that was a little unique. It was an agreement. Me and Pat talked about it, said, you know, this really should be signed and authorized by the council.
So was it private to D&W or?
Yeah, just like your water services, Your Honor, to your home, you know, after the shut-off is private to you, theirs just happens to be an 8-inch pipe.
Oh, okay.
So it's bigger, and the shut-off's way out the road. So it's the same principle, just it's a bigger pipe. Well, we can turn that into, or they can turn it into a water main that helps feed their water system.
Okay.
So just taking over that ownership. We would have never owned it. We would have never, if it would have needed maintenance or broke or replacement, we would have never touched it. It would have been privately replaced. So
That's a lot of water for a food mart.
there's a fire line that goes in there as well. So yeah, but they do have some food operations there. You know,
Yes.
it does take a high demand of water.
So we're doing this basically to clear the air. We have no interest, didn't expect to have an interest, and if somebody asks, we want to say, no, we're not, there's no interest.
Yeah.
So the
When Mark
whole,
and
the whole point of this was to say, hey, what you thought was true is true, we
Yep.
have no interest.
exactly.
Yeah, that's good.
Hope we didn't spend a lot of attorney's fees on this one.
We didn't.
Okay.
Mark may have.
All right, any other comments, questions, concerns? Nope, okay. Thanks, Derek. We're ready to vote.
Fritz?
Yes.
Vanessa?
Yes.
Ruger?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
And Caleb?
Yes. All right, report by city council. That was our last item. Who wants to weigh in?
Well,
Go ahead, Mike.
I'll start, and everybody else just sitting back here looking at paperwork here, and I'll just talk.
We figured you wanted to go first, we're waiting.
You were just waiting for me to go first, and so you can copy up, no, you can beat up on me or something anyways. The Boards and Commissions dinner was really nice and well-attended. And again, we want to say, a way of saying thank you to everybody that actually volunteers for us. So thank you for all attending, and thank you for all that actually are on our boards and commissions. So I want to say thank you for that very much. And hopefully we'll get the asphalt down on Harbor Drive. It's supposed to be planned tomorrow, is it? If I remember correct? Oh, Derek left on me.
Yeah, I hope so. Tomorrow, they were resetting a lot of structures today, so I don't know, and we'll see
Yeah.
what the weather does tomorrow, but certainly first part of this week is the plan.
Yeah, and I haven't seen any progress on those trees down there on First Street. Those gum trees?
Oh, yeah, we've been working on it.
Okay.
Working on getting costs together and figuring out how we're gonna get them out and what we're gonna put back in, and
Yeah, as long as we get some nice trees down there, it'd be nice.
it's in process.
I did make a walk through there again, and as I was walking by, the guys from the VFW came out and told me, thank you for saying a few words for them because they noticed that it is kind of dangerous down there. They've been having some of their grandkids come down and sweep them. But that just goes from Washington all the way to Columbus. And I also want to say thank you to having our streets are all been lined. You can see all the nice, pretty white lines out there. It looks really good. Asphalt's been laid. The streets are looking beautiful. And the sun did shine this weekend, and it was absolutely a great weekend to be in Grand Haven. So
Absolutely.
it was fun. I tell you, I had some sunshine and let's see people smile instead of having cloudy and gloom. So thank you all.
Okay, I'll go. On April 27th, we had our Science Olympiad State Tournament. As you know, I'm involved in that yet, and we have a state champion locally. Lakeshore Middle School finished first in the state in their division, and on the 1st of June, they'll compete at the national tournament at Cornell University in Ithaca, New York. We're looking forward to that trip. So, a little disappointed the high school just missed going, but there's next year. But Lakeshore did us really proud. All the kids did us really proud. Worked hard, it paid off. So that was a very gratifying day. Boards and Commissions dinner, again, appreciated all the work the boards and commissions do for us. Couldn't run the city in the way we do without it. That is our citizen involvement. You could run a city administratively all day long, but without the input of the people who give up their time to come in, give their advice, their thoughts, it really enriches the community. I did get to go with Pat and with another group of people on Wednesday to Lansing to testify at the Governmental Affairs and Municipal Finance
Local Government and Municipal Finance
Committee. They were taking testimony on the short-term rental proposed bill, which would be a preemption bill to take away the ability of states to have any zoning rules regarding short-term rentals. There was a lot of people there from cities all across the state. Most were in opposition, as were we. And it was a new experience for me. I never had a chance to do this. It was very interesting to watch the process. I thought the committee chair did a great job of running the meeting. And I kind of got cut off because I was the last person to speak and I ran out of time. But that happens. But the point is that there was a lot of opposition to this bill, well-founded opposition by cities from across the state who don't want Lansing making their decisions for them. This is really a preemption issue. What it really is the premise here is that lobbyists and certain legislators and people at the state level don't believe that we can be trusted to serve our own citizens. I think that's pretty offensive. I think that we do a really good job of listening to our people, coming up with solutions that work, and maybe changing and revolving, whatever we have to do. But we handle that here. We handle it for the character of our community. We do the things that we need to do without the intervention or the heavy-handed approach of state government telling us how it must be done. So I appreciate being a part of that. I hope that the bill dies in committee. And if there's anybody out there who hasn't contacted the state legislators, please let them know. This is still a very important issue to all of us. And I'm leaving tomorrow with my daughter for a vacation in Utah to celebrate the sesquicentennials of the Transcontinental Railroad. We're going to go out and see the big locomotives run in Utah. So we're looking forward to that. So we're leaving in the morning.
All right.
And I'll be gone for a week. That's all I got.
Well, I'll just piggyback on what Bob said. You didn't give a report on the Detroit Tigers there, Mike. I'm wondering.
Yeah, well, if you want me to.
Nah, it's all right. Just a post that was made on Grand Haven Informed on Wednesday last week, and a few comments that followed. I just want to, kudos to Bob, to Jerry. Wednesday was kind of a very active day for City Council in the state at the state level. Jerry was on TV talking to WZZM 13 about the bridge issues that we're having. I happen to be in Grand Rapids for Michigan Council for Local Government and Education Equity and Inclusion. That's a mouthful. They got to work on the acronym for that. And Bob was in Lansing talking about House Bill 4046, I think it was, with the short-term rentals. So we're there. We're working hard for the residents of Grand Haven, and I'm just proud to be serving in this seat right now. So thank you to everybody who's getting plugged in. That's all I've got.
Nothing. Yeah, the boards and commissions are always a great time and a great opportunity to say thank you to all the people that give of their volunteer time to serve their city, and we couldn't do this without them. They take care of a lot of, we had almost about close to 200 people that volunteer to serve our city over the course of the year. Thank you to all our volunteers. And 2 days after that was a chamber dinner, and always, a great time where Lynn Sherwood was honored posthumously for her contribution to the community. Everybody else was in Lansing for the short-term rental hearings. I got a call from Channel 13 saying that I have some time to meet them, talk about the bridge. And I thought, well, what a great opportunity that would be. So I was able to do that and try to get some help for the bridge not being as reliable as we would hope it would be. So I think that's, to keep that in front of people, I think is an important thing. So also went to the legislative forum at Fillmore on Friday. Always good to hear from our legislators and being able to give them feedback, and we were able to do that also on the short-term rental thing on Friday to say, there's a lot of things that the state needs to work on, and that's, need to get their budget done. They need to work on the roads. They need to see if we can get the bridge to be reliable. But things like short-term rentals are really something that needs to be done at the local level and not in Lansing. So we have the opportunity to let our legislators know how we feel about that at our local level. So that's always a good time to hear what's going on at the state level and what concerns folks at the local level. One of the things that we're concerned, a lot of people are concerned about the amount of vaping that's going on at the high school and how dangerous it is, and also the funding for community mental health is always in crisis, and so that is something that the county is always looking at as to how to make that equitable for Ottawa County right now. It's a big problem. So, anyway, it was again a gorgeous weekend. I hear it's going to be a bit of a drizzly week again this week, but spring is definitely on the way. The birds are chirping, raising their young'uns, and all is good in Grand Haven. So on to the city manager report.
Thank you, Your Honor. I did want to just update and seek any feedback from City Council about the catamaran request you heard about a couple meetings ago, and we've had a little bit of information sharing over the last few weeks. Most recently, I talked to the couple board members of the Highland Park Association and asked them if they could just kind of do a straw poll of some of their neighbors. Initially, it came back majority saying that they were okay with the idea and didn't have any problem. Today, I got an update at a meeting I was at around noon that it's 5-5 now. They've talked to 10 people. 5 said they thought it was okay. 5 said they didn't think it was a great idea. So that's pretty much par for the course in Grand Haven on every issue you have to decide, because the public seems to be pretty evenly split. I did just want to show you a map where you can pretty much make that out. The Bilmar is at the top of the screen, and at the bottom is where that dune goes up, where there's dune grass, and then there's a blowout at the very, very bottom of the screen. Then there's further dune on down. But where I put that blue rectangle is about 100 feet long. And if we're talking about 5 or 6 catamarans, each one probably not taking up much more than 10 foot wide, it wouldn't even take up a footprint quite that big if you were to allow them on the beach. And I actually measured it out, and I went down there today and took some pictures, and Dennis had taken some pictures, and he shared some of these with me. Better turn on that light. Helped a little bit, I guess. But on I think these two were meant to kind of be superimposed over one another. further down, so it's, oh, he's got it nice and smooth. Well, yeah, that's even a better shot there. Where you can see where that grade kind of goes up on the right-hand side of the screen. And that area up there is what I was trying to show here. To give you an idea, you know, that area marked in blue could be where the grade starts to go up on an incline there. So they could kind of go along the incline there. I'm showing that just to kind of show you they'd probably be out of the way of soccer in the sand or the pole vaulting event or anybody wanting to use that flat beach area. So I really just wanted to show you, to give you an idea what Dennis Sands was thinking when he approached you a few weeks ago, give you a little more detail on it. That's just from the road looking down, and on your left there would be where those sailboats could go. If there were interest on city council, you know, I don't want to spend too much time on this without further direction from city council. As I explained to Dennis, that the way we're set up, the city manager doesn't have authority to let people use public property like that. That's certainly a city council prerogative, whether or not to lease or allow folks to use the public beach property, because if it was up to the city manager, there'd be a small camper sitting down there all summer long, and that's where I'd be staying. So I know you don't let me put things on the beach. But if there were an interest on city council to explore it further, I would expect to give you some framework. The city of Muskegon does permit some of this, so I would look at their forms and see what kind of liability waiver form that they have, what the rate might be, what you would want to charge for it. If there were going to be a maximum number of boats you would allow down there, if you're going to allow, say, a maximum of 6 or 10 boats or whatever you thought was proper. Dennis also shared some information with me about method that they use to tether these catamarans down to keep them from flopping around out there. It's a very secure system that is pretty much invisible when the boats aren't there. There's just little tethers sticking up out of the sand. The anchors are down beneath grade, and just the tethers come up that they use to hook to the bottom of the boats, and they anchor them in 3 or 5 different spaces to keep them nice and secure. So that's just a quick update, review, and I can't do anything else with it. At this point, I seek city council direction. Again, I can't approve it. As far as advice goes, the 1980s were the last time we allowed a significant number of boats down there, and I was told that it was somewhat it wasn't without pain that the city council cleared all those boats off the beach. You had a number of folks down there that were using the beach space, and the city came to a decision that it had run its course, so they all had to leave, and I don't think they left happily. So it would be something that if you do allow it, if some future council doesn't want them there anymore, it's easier to put them there than it is to take them away. Put it that way. It's not a pleasant thing when you have to tell somebody they can't be there anymore if that's what you decide to do. So even if you say, well, let's do it as a trial or something, if you decide later not to have them there, it could be a little stressful on you.
2 cents?
Well, if you, I guess my first inclination is extreme caution, because I can see a lot of potential issues developing, including, visibility to the boats. And like say, once you can get them in there, if it doesn't work out, getting them out is a whole other problem. So I would use extreme caution in saying yes to parking boats on the beach, because, well, for one thing, my next question is going to be what's next? Who else wants to park something on the beach? So
I'll just
I'm a bit concerned.
if you want an answer tonight, I'll give you an blunt thing about it all, is that through the years since I've been on here, we've had residents down there that wanted to put their little sunfishes and whatever else down there, and we expressly told them that we couldn't allow them to be on the city property because it is a beach. We don't want them down there. Pretty soon you start letting them in there. I know what happens. We might as well, if you're going to do that, we might as well have the whole beach lined up with boats, because they're just going to give a select few you know, it's not a good thing. I don't even want to go down that road. I'm saying no. I'm not even enticed about it, intrigued, anything on that order. I don't think it's a good thing for our beach. It's getting smaller. The lake is coming up. It's getting smaller, and we have such a large influx of people here during the beach season. As the beach gets smaller, you're going to be taking up more of that space down there. I don't think we need to have boats on our beach. We tell them they have to stay out of the swim area. We don't want them close to the shore. We don't want them there. It's just the way it has been, and that's the way I like it. It's nice and clean and a good place to enjoy for people to bring their families down there and enjoy and not have to worry about dodging a catamaran, dodging this, and worrying about a tether to get snagged on their foot or whatever. So I just don't think it's a good idea myself personally.
I'll go along with that. Also, when you get the beach cleaner down there, that area is awful hard to clean when you got boats in the way, and so I'm definitely not in favor of putting down there. And I remember back in the '80s when that was going on, and a big controversy. We don't need that, so I'm going to say no too.
Guess we're heading down. I'll reiterate a little bit of what I emailed to Pat in regards to this request. Having ridden in a cat out on the big lake, I can tell you it's an awesome adrenaline rush. It's a great thing to be out there. So I appreciate that. I have to juxtapose that, though, with the fact that this is our city beach and limited access to it and limited availability. And in the case with the Hobie Cat that I rode on, it was owned by my uncle. He was a part of an association that had some private property that abutted to the beach. And that was a great place for him to pull it up. And I'd say the same thing in your case. Maybe there's some private property owners along the beach who would be interested in this in Grand Haven. I would be open to, as an alternative, something similar to what we've done with Soccer in the Sand or the Kite Festival. If there were a Hobie Cat Festival, for example, and they needed to be beached for a weekend, or maybe a slightly longer time, up to a week or something like that, to do that, I'd be open to that on a temporary basis. But as far as an all-summer or long-term staking out and whatever it may be, I'm not in favor of that, but I appreciate the request. That's my thoughts.
Yeah, and I'm with Mike on this too. I mean, this, as described, it sounds like one of those no harm, no foul, pretty innocuous proposals. And probably by itself, it wouldn't really create a lot of disruption, but I think that then you'd have the next party to come along that you'd have to say no or yes to. I think then you'd have to police it, you'd have to regulate it. You can't just, if you just grant a permission to somebody who you think is a good guy, and then later on somebody else comes along and says, well, you did it for him, why not me? Pretty soon you're going to be at a point of saying no to everyone. So rather than go there, I think I would say no up front. I think that we've been through plenty of controversy with local beach users who didn't like the dogs being there when they were there, or who wanted one thing or another, and to add another element of beached catamarans, boats, or whatever else comes along. I think that's going to become a problem that we don't really need. So I appreciate the request as well, and I'm sure that what you got and what you do is a lot of fun, but I think it's going to cause us more trouble than we want.
In my closing statement, I thank you for your time. In disregard to some of the statements that were made, the people that you have given that opportunity to be there, paying for that location makes us appreciate that per se. And at the same point in time, the type of people that you have there, you don't have a guarded area on the beach for certain types of people or nationalities. This is a group that would be proactive sailing, and being in the location that Pat showed up there, if that moved a little bit here or there towards the water or back, it's an area of the sand that it's not used for people sitting around bathing. They're going to be and have been closer towards the city beach bathing room, bathhouse area. There's very few people that sit down there. I respect the cleanliness. There's two of us that are different types of ecologist type person. One owns a company in Ann Arbor, and he's and other people that have been core sailors for their whole life. I respect the ability to say, don't give into this group and you give into that group. I think it depends on what the group is and how they're going to respond and react. At some point in time, I wish you would reconsider. You could give us a chance, and if you see people misbehaving, we're going to be the first ones causing the other person to stop it. It's not that type of wild action that you might remember from the 80s and the 70s and so forth. The people that are there all are over 45. There's one that's at 30, but he's a hardcore sailor too. So if you do reconsider, I appreciate thinking about that. The area that we have had, it's always been clean and manicured. There is no debris on the ground because we're walking around in bare feet. We manicure that area by ourselves, and we locked on the boats. I've had boats that have been secured on the Muskegon Beach at 80, 90 miles an hour. I've had them down the Hurricanes in Florida, and that's 140, 150 miles an hour, and they stay put because of the way we anchor them down. So we know how to do that without being obscene to the public area and make it a nice environmental thing. But at some point in time, if you reconsider, I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, thanks for your comments.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that, Dennis and City Council. Two other things. I just wanted to give Ashley some a shout out for the work she's doing on the detail on that grant. Lot of fine tuning and busy work that she's working on, and it's a rite of passage. We all get to do it, and I hope someday she's got an Ashley to work on that stuff. But for today, she is the Ashley, and she's really been putting the time in, and you really do have to pay attention to a lot of things that you wouldn't expect. I'd love to tell you about it. Maybe Ashley will vent on you a little bit before this whole thing's done, but we really have to document, and continue to prove things that seem pretty obvious. Our environmental impact statement is going to be very interesting because, I mean, obviously we're not making any big environmental impact, but it'll be pages and pages and pages of proof that we're not disturbing the environment, but so thank you, Ashley. She's doing a great job on that. And finally, we are once again going to plan a city tiger trip down to Detroit in June. 25th is the date we're looking at, and there it is. We do pay for our tickets, but I'm pretty sure we'll fill that bus up and have a great time team building and watching the Tigers win another game against the Texas Rangers on June 25th. Guaranteeing a win right now.
All right.
Don't even know who's pitching.
Boyd's pitching.
All right. I hope so.
You don't even know who'll be on the roster.
He might be for Texas by then. So that's all I had tonight, Your Honor.
All right, thanks. General business, call the audience. If anyone would like to address council at this time?
Becca. I'm going to make this as quick as I can because I know the evening is kind of running shorter than it normally does. So as you know, I'm here tonight to invite you to a couple events. As you can see, there's there's a prom, and then there's a town hall meeting that we are hosting on mental health illness. As you know, the county approved a mental health millage in 2016, extended grace, a nonprofit grassroots movement to create stigma-free community, received funding from that millage to open the Momentum Center in Social Engagement, which offers social and recreational opportunities to those with mental illness, addiction, and disability. I'm very glad to tell you that your millage dollars are generally saving lives and giving people hope, purpose, and community. Extended Grace, together with the Mental Health Task Force, which I'm a part of, has been hosting town hall meetings on mental illness in Grand Haven for more than 3 years now. And the rest of the county, as noticed in the normalizing these important conversations. As a result, we have facilitated these first town hall meetings in Holland just a few weeks ago. The topics was on ACEs, Adverse Childhood Experience Study. I am now happy to personally invite you to attend another town hall meeting that will be on this particular topic. This one will be held right here in Grand Haven. The need to educate people regarding ACEs and connect them with the resources for strengthening resiliency is part of the Community Health Improvement Plan. The community health assessment taught us that 53% of people living in Ottawa County have at least one adverse childhood experience. 14% have 4 or more, and ACEs put people at greater risk for health problems, both mental and physical. Please consider joining us for this important community conversation on Monday, June 3rd at 6:30 p.m. at the Grand Haven Community Center. and how to counteract the effects and how to prevent them and from happening in the future. Those are the flyers that I kind of sent out today. We also offer QPR training, which is a suicide prevention training. There's a place for the town hall right before, from 5 to 6, and will be led by TCM Counseling. If you've not had QPR training yet, please let me encourage you to do so now. If you have been in Just Goods or taken a tour of the Momentum Center, I also want to personally extend that invitation as well. Come in, meet the staff, volunteers, and members to see firsthand the movement that this community has created. 1 in 4 people will experience mental illness during a lifetime, and 1 in 5 people are disabled. Our annual event, Prom with a Purpose, is coming up May 17th in the ballroom above Portobello's. Tickets are just $25 for the night, for the dinner, dancing and fun, or you can buy the tickets yourself. And you can support the tickets by buying them from extendedgrace.org. Mental illness is a community issue, and we're hoping that you as elected officials are interested in a community solution. Thanks, guys.
All right, thanks very much.
Thank you.
All right. Anyone else? If not, we will adjourn. So thanks all for coming.